Chapter 26:11. Ning Xuema knew that he had suffered a great blow and needed some time to calm down. There are gains and losses. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Shinjuli's voice was faint, but his words hit the nail on the head. Ning Xuema nodded slightly and sighed. Jun Liuye was a man of great talent and strategy. Perhaps in his heart he had always prioritized the country. He had indeed won the world, but he had also completely lost her. Love did not hold much weight in an emperor's heart. Perhaps he would be able to walk out of it soon. It was just like what she had read in a modern romance novel. Ruling over a vast country, enjoying endless loneliness. He had chosen this path himself, so he could only continue walking down it himself. Speaking of which, great God, I keep feeling that Jun Liuye is somewhat familiar, as if I've seen him somewhere before. But I can swear that this is the first time I've seen him. Perhaps, this isn't the first time you've seen him. Perhaps you've interacted with him before. Shinjuli raised a hand to ruffle her hair. This world isn't that big. The great God had begun to meditate again. Ning Xuema was too lazy to waste her time thinking. She was now worried about another problem. Great God, if this is your second task, then does this mean that we've failed? Shinjuli pondered for a moment. That's hard to say. He turned to look at the mountain peak in the distance. This depends on the emperor's choice. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Her eyes sparkled. You're saying that they still have hope? Shinjuli smiled but did not answer. Ning Xuema also knew that it was inconvenient for the great God to say too much when it came to matters of the heavens. She did not press him any further. She was about to say something when she suddenly sensed something and raised her head. Dark clouds gathered in the sky. The inky black clouds rolled in like a tide, covering the entire sky in the blink of an eye. The sky was dark as if it was the end of the world. Crack. A golden bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, cutting a mountain peak in the distance. With a loud bang, half of the mountain collapsed. What was going on? Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in a world of ice and snow. Could it be that there were spirits or monsters in the mountains that were about to undergo a heavenly tribulation? Streak after streak of lightning struck down like a dancing golden snake. Endless rumbling sounds could be heard as all of the mountain peaks suffered the calamity and collapsed along with the lightning. Mountains crumbled and the earth cracked. The mountain was about to collapse. Wasn't the heavenly lightning very accurate when a Fae transcended its tribulation? If he only used his strength on the tribulation transcendence Fae, he would not harm the surrounding flowers and plants. But now, it was as if the entire mountain was undergoing a tribulation. Could it be that this snow mountain had become a spirit? It can't be. With the Almighty by her side and Ning Xuema's high level of kung fu, even if the sky collapsed she wouldn't be hurt. She suddenly turned around and ran back. Shinjuli grabbed her and asked, "Where are you going?" Jun Liuye is still in that cave. With the mountains collapsing and the earth cracking, he better not be buried inside. Although his attributes are a bit trash, he is still a wise emperor. We still have to save him. Let's do a good deed today. Ning Xuema had just said this when she suddenly froze. A golden bolt of lightning as thick as a pot lid swayed down from the sky and struck the tallest mountain peak. The loud sound of thunder shook the entire world. After the lightning passed, the mountain peak disappeared. No, it was instantly flattened. Such a tall mountain peak was actually flattened by a bolt of lightning. Chapter 26:12. And the ice cave where Jiu's body was hidden was on top of the mountain. Great God, go save him. Ning Xuema pulled Shinjuli and ran. Logically speaking, the people in the cave shouldn't have been able to survive after the landslide, but Jun Liuye was not an ordinary person. He was the male lead here, not to mention that his martial arts were abnormally high. That person, aside from not knowing any spells, was at the peak of perfection in all other aspects. He clearly surpassed the settings of an ordinary person in this world. Just like the great God, he belonged to an abnormal species. How could such a person die in this landslide? Shinjuli pulled Ning Xuema into his arms and smiled. You care about him that much? Ning Xuema pressed her hand on his shoulder. Great God, I'll have to trouble you to put away your vinegar bottle first. Saving people is more important. Shinjuli didn't move and continued to tease her. Xuema, you're the devil lord, yet you're even more merciful than a deity. Did I train you? Train your ass. Ning Xuema said, Great God, he's the emperor of this continent. He can be considered the number one person. He followed you and me up the mountain. At that time his subjects all saw it. If he dies here, you and I won't have a good time when we go down. They'll treat us like jinx and beat us up. You don't want to live like a street rat, right? Be good and listen to me. Let's go save him first. At this time he might be lying in a crack in a rock waiting for you to save him. She pulled his arm and pulled him forward. She felt that walking was too slow, so she simply pulled him and flew. She flew into the air like a gust of wind. Suddenly she seemed to realize something and suddenly stopped her cloud steps. The result of this sudden stop was that Shinjuli, who was pulled by her, directly crashed into her body. If he didn't quickly catch her, she would have been sent flying in a parabola. What's wrong? Shinjuli helped her up and then took a step back. He crossed his arms and looked at her. I can actually fly. My psychokinesis has been restored. Ning Xuema was in disbelief. She even moved her arms and legs. Congratulations. Shinjuli congratulated her without much sincerity. Ning Xuema was still confused, but now was not the time to think about these things. She was still thinking about saving people. She pulled Shinjuli's hand and said, Guru, don't talk nonsense here. Let's get the emperor out first. Shinjuli pointed down with his chin. Take a look. Is there any other way? Ning Xuema looked down and her head buzzed. In just a few moments, the snowy mountain that had been filled with mountains had completely disappeared. Below it was a vast expanse of white snow, and not a single trace of its former appearance could be seen. This is an entire mountain. It actually disappeared just like that without leaving any trace behind. It was too strange. Under such circumstances, trying to find someone who was originally hiding in the cave was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, that person was most likely not there anymore. Ning Xuema decisively grabbed the guru's arm. Guru, it looks like you'll have to revive Jun Luyi. Fortunately, he was crushed to death by the mountain, so his soul didn't scatter. Help him summon a soul and create a body. She said it as if he could create a person out of mud. Shinjuli chuckled. His soul should also be gone. The guru's expression actually looked a bit happy. Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Guru, was this what you expected? Chapter 26:13. Shinjuli put an arm on her shoulder and said lazily, It seems that this is his choice. That's good. Everything is back on track. Ning Xuema crossed her arms and waited for him to explain. Master. Master. Two figures, one red and one blue, came from afar and flew to the two of them in the blink of an eye. It was Kirin and Little Phoenix. The two beasts looked flustered. Little Phoenix asked a series of questions. Master, are you okay? We heard the commotion from the capital. Oh my God. Why did the mountain collapse? That's right. The commoners in the capital are also in a state of panic. An army is rushing over here. The little Qilin added. Ning Xuema and the rest were in midair. Naturally they could see further. Ning Xuema shaded her eyes with her hand and looked far away. She could faintly see an army rushing over. When Ning Xuema and the rest followed Jun Liuya up the mountain, there was an army waiting for them at the foot of the mountain. It was this army that was rushing in their direction. It was even led by a few of Jun Liuya's trusted subordinates. Great God, if they find out that their emperor is gone, how will they see us? What should we do now? Ning Xuema rubbed her eyebrows. She did not want to be a jinx anymore. Shinjuli pondered for a moment, then slowly came up with a bad idea. Let's run. Ah. The great god could run away too? Shinjuli did not wait for her to say anything else. He hugged her and jumped onto Kirin's back. Let's go. Although there was an 80% chance that they would suffer if they stayed, it was not like the great god to run away. Ning Xuema felt that there was something wrong with the great god's style. But soon she felt that the great god's style had returned to normal. This was because the great god's escape was incomparably cool. He actually commanded Kirin to fly directly toward the army. Kirin and Little Phoenix were both auspicious beasts. Previously, when they had lost their telekinesis and could only fly, they had attracted the attention of the people of this world. Now they had also recovered their telekinesis. Kirin's entire body was wrapped in a misty blue light, which looked like clouds and mist. Little Phoenix was wrapped in the bright and beautiful flames. When the two beasts flew side by side, there were simply thousands of rays of multicolored light, and propitious vapors were rising. Naturally, this caused the people below to exclaim in surprise. Amidst the exclamations of the people below, Shinjuli and Ning Xuema appeared in the air. Their bodies seemed to be shrouded in auspicious light as they stood in the air like clouds and mist. Even if they didn't say anything, they still caused the people below to kneel down. Immortal. God. Lord Imperial Preceptor is an immortal. Where is His Majesty? His Majesty has the protection of the immortals. He must be fine. Everyone hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed, all of them extremely excited. When they finished kowtowing and raised their heads to look again, Lord Imperial Preceptor and his wife had already flown far away on the auspicious beasts and disappeared into the horizon. Lord Imperial Preceptor is an immortal. Then, the collapse of the mountain just now might not be a bad thing but a good thing. That's right, this mountain has always blocked the way out of the capital. Now, it is a flat and smooth road. But why didn't His Majesty come out? Could it be that His Majesty has also been turned into an immortal by Lord Imperial Preceptor? Everyone's discussion gradually faded away and gradually became inaudible. Ning Xuema glanced at the great god beside her. Sure enough, he was still the great god. He just came out of nowhere and solved the big matter of the emperor's disappearance. Chapter 26:14. In the hearts of the people, even if they couldn't find their emperor, they would only think that their emperor had become an immortal and not be smashed to death. The people here still worshipped the great god and wouldn't curse him behind his back. Now that Ning Xuema and the rest had recovered their psychokinesis, they could fly to outer space to find the space door to return to their own era. However, when they first came to this continent, they came out from underground, so they didn't know where the space door to the Qinxi continent was. They were afraid that they would have to search aimlessly in outer space again. Ning Xuema was about to ask the great god if he had a good way to locate it when she suddenly saw a snow-white thing rushing up from the snow below. The heavenly stone. To think that it would actually appear here. Kirin didn't recognize this stone and thought that it was a flying stone. Before the heavenly stone flew in front of him, he slapped it with his claws. What is this? A monstrous wave rushed towards the heavenly stone. Naturally, the heavenly stone wouldn't be hit by the wave. It struck out with a flash of lightning and directly forced the wave back. Kirin was almost hit in the face by his own wave. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. He scratched with his claws and barely managed to retract the wave back. He retracted it too quickly and wet his leg hair. Kirin didn't expect that a stone would dare to challenge him. He glared at the sky and roared, looking like he wanted to fight with the stone. Little Phoenix also didn't want to see his companion at a disadvantage. He opened his eyes wide and fanned out a fire, preparing to refine the stone. The two beasts were used to working together recently. Little Phoenix was responsible for burning the stone. When the stone started to smoke, Kirin would spray ice water at it. Under this alternating cold and hot attack, even if it was a piece of iron, they would still be able to break it into pieces. Now that it was a stone that attacked them, the two beasts were even more excited. Flames and cold water were sprayed towards the heavenly stone. It's just a stone. They didn't believe that they couldn't blow it up under the alternating cold and hot attacks. The heavenly stone had always been worshipped by everyone and was used to being arrogant. It didn't expect that it would be attacked as soon as it appeared in this world. It was also angry and its body flashed with colorful lights, repelling the flames and water back. A bird, a beast, and a stone started to fight in the air. Ning Xuema wanted to stop them when they started to fight, but Xinjiuli stopped her. Let them play. He pulled her away from the battlefield and watched the fight. Ning Xuema said, Great God, this isn't good, right? While standing beside the great god to watch the fire. Ever since she reunited with the little Qilin and the little Phoenix, she hadn't really seen them fight. Now she wanted to see how much their martial arts had improved. It was a rare opportunity, the wind and water's fire. Ning Xuema didn't forget to comment. Kirin has grown up in these few hundred years. I remember that when I left it, the water it sprayed out was only as thick as a bowl, but now it's as thick as a bucket. It just needs to control its strength. Little Phoenix is also not bad. This child has become more courageous after following Kirin. When it fights, it knows how to cooperate with its companions. Xinjiuli also slowly interrupted. It's really not bad. It seems that they are a perfect match. Great God, why don't we pair them up? Ning Xuema was excited. Chapter 26:15. It's better to let nature take its course. Xinjiuli tapped the flute on his palm. Great God, the heavenly Tao stone said that you need to help 3 couples. Maybe Kirin and Little Phoenix are one of the couples. They are a good match. Aya, if a Phoenix and a Kirin become husband and wife, what kind of children will they have? A Kirin with Phoenix wings? Or a Phoenix with a Kirin's head? Xinjiuli was speechless. Her imagination was extraordinarily rich. Hey, if you don't ask these two to stop, I won't be polite anymore. The heavenly Tao stone suddenly scrolled in Ning Xuema's mind. It was obviously very angry. The scrolling words were so bright that it could blind people's eyes. Ning Xuema crossed her arms and smiled. If you dare to be rude to them, I'll ask the great god to be rude to you. The heavenly Tao stone. The great god was now a person who only cared about the opposite sex. The heavenly Tao stone really didn't dare to provoke her. It could only use other methods. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news and bring you back. There's a time limit. If you miss the time, therefore little Phoenix and Kirin who were fighting fiercely just now were stopped by Ning Xuema. Stop fighting, we're on the same side. Little Phoenix, Kirin's eyes widened and blurted out, Master, how did you become on the same side with a broken stone? Little Phoenix also joined in the chaos. Yes, this stone is so abnormal and it doesn't look good. These two sentences completely offended the heavenly Tao stone. Originally it wanted to leave with the two people and two beasts, but now it refused to take Kirin and Little Phoenix. No matter how Ning Xuema threatened it, it was useless. It was rare that it couldn't be subdued. Kirin was also angry. It tilted its head and said, if you don't want to take us, then don't. We can go back by ourselves. Master, right? We don't need this broken stone. We can rely on ourselves. Shinjuli looked at it and said calmly, I didn't expect you to have such ambition. Kirin raised its head. Of course. It did not want to be looked down upon. Little Phoenix also put in a good word for it. Master, its ability to recognize the way is very strong. We have been to many places in the past few years, and we have not gotten lost many times. Shinjuli looked at the two of them and tapped the Kirin's scales with his flute. Very good. Then you can go back by yourselves. Kirin, Little Phoenix, Kirin could not take back what he had said. They could only watch helplessly as Shinjuli held Ning Xuema's hand and entered the stone, disappearing without a trace. How unkind. How could he abandon such loyal creatures just like that? Kirin clenched his claws and stared at the rock. It didn't matter, even if it didn't go in, it could still quietly follow the same route as the stone. It and Little Phoenix could still go back. Its current speed was nothing to scoff at. The heavenly Tao stone lit up and suddenly flew out, shooting straight toward the eastern sky. Little Qilin called out to Little Phoenix and immediately followed. They also increased their speed to the extreme. Kirin narrowed its eyes proudly when it saw the stone flying in front of them. Suddenly the stone circled in place as if it had some malfunction and fell straight down. Poof! It plunged into the snow and disappeared without a trace. Master and the others will be fine, right? It knew that this stone was not reliable. Chapter 26:16. Little Qilin jumped in fright. It retracted its wings and also plunged down. A moment later, Kirin came out of the snow, its eyes full of doubts. Did you find Master and the others? Little Phoenix, who was waiting on the ground, rushed over. No. I saw it fall down. But I looked for it for a long time and I couldn't even find its shadow. I didn't even see the passage it went through. Then what should we do? Little Phoenix was anxious. Don't worry, let me think of a way. Maybe the stone is really something and it's petty and doesn't want us to follow it, so forget it, we'll find our own way back. You follow me, don't run around. Kirin took on the responsibility of a man. Little Phoenix still trusted it. The bird and the beast began to find their own way, in the crystal hall in the belly of the heavenly stone. Shinjuli and Ning Xuema sat opposite each other. The heavenly stone had recovered well recently. Although it was running at a high speed, Ning Xuema and the others didn't feel any turbulence. Shinjuli even set up a chessboard and asked Ning Xuema to play a game. Ning Xuema was a little worried about Kirin and the others. Guru, what if they can't find their way back if we leave them like this? Shinjuli tapped on the chessboard and analyzed for her. Didn't you want to pair them up? Now we're giving them a chance. That stupid Kirin will only grow quickly when it has no one to rely on. Ning Xuema thought so too. Kirin had indeed grown a lot after being separated for so many years. He was also more responsible than before. In her mind, Kirin and Little Phoenix were like children. She didn't want to let them go. She was afraid that they would be taken advantage of or kidnapped. But because of this, these two were too dependent on her, which was not conducive to their growth. Perhaps she should really let go of these two and let them grow freely. This was the best for them. Now that these two's martial arts were not low, and their ability to travel through time and space was also very strong, they would not really suffer any losses. It would be good to let them roam alone. Ning Xuema was a person who could take things and let them go easily. Since she had thought it through, she didn't take it to heart. Congratulations to the two of you for completing the second mission. A line of joyous words appeared on the crystal pillar within the heavenly Tao stone. Ning Xuema was silent for a moment before she asked, Is the marriage between Kirin and Little Phoenix the second task? The second mission was too simple. It didn't seem like the Heavenly Tao style at all. Unexpectedly, the Heavenly Tao stone retorted with a bunch of exclamation marks. Then it retorted with the correct answer, no, no. The second task that this stone is talking about is not them. They are not qualified. I'm talking about Sir God Rongyu. Ning Xuema was surprised. Sir God Rongyu is? Rongyue Tianlan, Shinjioli, who was beside him, answered slowly. Rongyue Tianlan? I don't remember fulfilling his wish. At this point, Ning Xuema's big black eyes suddenly widened. She finally reacted, could it be that Jun Liuya is Rongyue Tianlan? It can't be. Isn't he still alive and well? How did he become Jun Liuya? This was too strange. However, Ning Xuema thought about Jun Liuya's character and bearing carefully. He did resemble Rongyue Tianlan a little. But they didn't look alike. Otherwise, she would have recognized him at a glance. Chapter 26:17. Shinjioli tapped the chessboard with his finger and said, play this game with me and I'll tell you. Ning Xuema's curiosity was piqued. She immediately grabbed a chess piece and said, come on. The two of them played the game very quickly. Ning Xuema also lost very quickly. After one game, Ning Xuema pushed the chessboard and said, Guru, tell me, what's going on? Shinjioli was too lazy to talk. He waved his hand and a white light flashed. The crystal pillar next to them flashed some images like a movie screen. Under a bright red swaying tree, two people were sitting opposite each other and playing chess. One was wearing a white robe and the other was wearing a blue robe. Both of them had outstanding looks and an outstanding bearing. Sitting under the tree, they looked particularly eye-catching. Ning Xuemo recognized that the white-robed person was Shinjioli, and the blue-robed person was Rongyu Ishinlan. The battle on the chessboard was fierce, and the black and white pieces were fighting happily. The chessboard was like a battlefield, and it was also particular about the arrangement of troops. The chess player was like the marshal controlling the troops. Shinjioli's white pieces already had the advantage, and Rongyu Ishinlan's black pieces were stubbornly resisting. Suddenly, Shinjioli seemed to have sensed something. He waved his sleeve and a water mirror appeared in front of him. The water mirror showed the scene of Dizun appearing in the cities of various countries. Of course, the Dizun that appeared in the water mirror was Shinjioli's substitute, Wu Mo. He sat in a palanquin, and his bearing were not much different from Shinjioli's. The commoners outside knelt down to welcome him, and the scene was very solemn and grand. Rongyu Ishinlan also took a look at the water mirror. She waved her fan and smiled. Dizwa, you've done a good job as a substitute. However, there's something I don't understand and I want to ask you for advice. Shinjioli turned the chess piece in his hand and didn't raise his head. Speak. Dizwa, if you want the commoners to live and work in peace, why not unify the continent? There will be fewer wars. Once the mainland is unified, there will be no competition. The regime will decay and decline, and the people will have no way to make a living. Once the corruption reaches the extreme, the people will have no way to survive and will rise up in revolt. At that time, the warlords will be divided and there will be endless chaos. It's better to have three sides. It was rare for Shinjioli to say so much. Rong Yuetian put down a chess piece. He did not agree with Dizun's argument. The two of them continued to play chess while debating, but neither of them managed to convince the other. In the end, Rong Yuetianlan chuckled. If I am reincarnated as a human, I will definitely unify the mainland and create a peaceful and prosperous world. Shinjioli casually placed a piece to decide the outcome. Yes, let's wait and see. A gust of wind blew over, blowing away countless red petals that danced around the two of them. It was quite a scene. The scene gradually faded away. Ning Xuema looked at the picture on the crystal pillar and suddenly realized, could it be that your debate with him made him want to enter the secular world? Is that why he reincarnated as Jun Liuya? That can't be right. Rongyue Tianlan is still perfectly fine on Carefree Island. How did he reincarnate? Shinjioli waved his hand and removed the picture. I have known him for many years and have debated many things. But neither of us cared. Rong Yuetian probably also thought that he didn't care, so he never mentioned it again. It wasn't until later that I was seriously injured while picking herbs. Before I fainted, I contacted him and he rushed over to save me. Although he succeeded in saving me, he was also seriously injured. Because of this, he went into seclusion for over a dozen years. During his seclusion, something went wrong. Ning Xuema's heart stirred. She was a bit startled. Chapter 26:18. She knew when Shinjioli was referring to the time when she was severely injured while picking herbs. It was the time when the Almighty went to the lava land to pick herbs in order to get rid of the demon in her body. Before the Almighty left, he told her to wait for half a month. In the end, she waited for him for 10 years instead. What happened? He was too heavily injured. When he was meditating to recover, he accidentally went berserk. Although he later adjusted himself, a part of his soul escaped. That's why he came out a few years later than he originally said he would. Ning Xuema was stunned for a moment. The part of his soul that escaped couldn't be Jun Liuye, right? Shen Juli said indifferently, the one that escaped was his second soul, concealed arrow, which is also a battle soul. Perhaps the debate between him and me that day caused this soul to become obsessed, so it floated to this cloud underworld continent and reincarnated as Jun Liuye. Since he's a part of Rong Yu's soul, why doesn't he look like her at all? Ning Xuema asked. The soul has no appearance. Since he was reincarnated, he naturally resembles his parents in this life. It's normal that he doesn't look like his original body. So that's how it is. Since he was reincarnated as a battle soul, his natural mission was to become famous through battle. In his heart, the empire would always be first. That's why Jiu ended up like this. Ning Xuema finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. She couldn't help but sigh. Fate makes fools of people. No wonder this Jun Liuye inexplicably believed that the great god had a resurrection technique. It turned out that he used to be the great god's old friend. In this life he came into this life because of the great god. No wonder he was also counted in the great god's account, allowing him to set things right. She seemed to have thought of something. Since he's the reincarnation of Rong Yu's soul, does his death mean that he's returned to his original body? Shen Juli poured 2 cups of tea out of nowhere and handed one to Ning Xuema. He then lazily replied, whether he's returned or not, we'll know when we see him. All right, Ning Xuema didn't want to delve into this question. She was going to see him in person soon anyway. She had another question. Great God, when did you realize that he was Island Master Rong Yu? Shen Juli said, not much earlier than you. After entering his dream. Although the Almighty was a highly intelligent person, he didn't really care about mortals. He couldn't be bothered with most things. Unless someone did something that really piqued his interest, he would thoroughly investigate and deduce. Ning Xuema didn't think that she would see Rongyue Tianlan so soon. She had only taken a nap, and as she awoke she discovered that she was standing in a square of carefree island that was covered with all sorts of strange flowers and plants. She felt that the stone was trembling as if it was frightened by something. She curiously looked outside through the crystal and saw Rongyue Tian carrying a bright chisel and walking around the stone. She looked quite excited and was even muttering, this stone actually emerged from the ground on its own. Looking at it, it looks like it's carrying precious jade. Could it be that it's automatically sending money to me? Would this island master be able to cut out a peerless piece of jade with a chisel? Perhaps it's another jade annulus of He clan? Ning Xuema, the heavenly Tao stone could no longer remain calm. It hurriedly sent out a line of words. Hurry up and leave. Shen Juli wasn't worried at all. He tapped the crystal with his flute and said, you don't usually show your face, so why did you suddenly come out of the ground? The heavenly Tao stone nearly cried. I wasn't careful and drilled over the top. As Rongyue Tianlan's chisel was about to sink in, the heavenly Tao stone recklessly opened an exit. Chapter 26:19. Shen Juli smiled. Then he held Ning Xuema's hand and walked out slowly. The autumn wind was refreshing and the flowers bloomed beautifully. Under the worryless tree, Rongyu Ishinlin asked the little boy to prepare a table of food. The food was sumptuous and the fruits and vegetables were very nutritious. There were a few rare treasures. Ning Xuema ate to her heart's content. Shen Juli saw that she ate to her heart's content, so he was satisfied too. Rongyu Ishinlin had already put away his chisel. At this moment he was waving a fan. Are the two of you satisfied with the food? Can you satisfy my curiosity? The two of you obviously returned to Buddha Lotus Mountain to see your disciples. How did you come out of the stone in the blink of an eye? That stone, is it a female? The heavenly law stone, which had been too lazy to bother with idle people, couldn't help but strike Rongyu Ishinlin with a bolt of lightning. Rongyu Ishinlin was surprised. He waved his fan and the bolt of lightning struck his fan. With a swoosh, a hole appeared on the surface of the fan. Rongyu Ishinlin's fan looked ordinary, but it was actually a treasured fan. Not to mention the other flashy functions, its sturdiness alone could defeat all shields. No divine weapon would be able to leave a single mark on it. Now it was burned by a bolt of lightning from a stone. Rongyu Yushinlin was so distressed that he wanted to kick the stone to the sky. Where did this stone spirit come from? Rongyu Yushinlin looked at the heavenly law stone unkindly. Tell this ignorant person that I am the heavenly law stone, the one in charge of the heavenly law, not some stone spirit. Stone spirit is not even fit to wipe my shell. The heavenly law stone kept saying to Ning Xuema and Xin Jiuli in their hearts. Ning Xuema smiled and said, "Didn't you say that your identity shouldn't be revealed in this world? Why are you letting me say it now?" The heavenly law stone was speechless. It was depressed. Suddenly, it drilled into the ground and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her own piece of land that didn't even have an ant's nest left behind. She then looked at Xinjiuli and Luo Binghe. "Both of you, can you tell Xiaoxian what's going on? Where did the stone go?" He could see through all invisibility spells, so the stone should not be invisible. Xinjiuli didn't care. "Don't worry about it. It's going to conserve energy." If Xinjiuli didn't want to talk about it, even a diamond drill wouldn't be able to pry it open. Rongyue Tian had no choice but to give up. The three of them drank for a while. Ning Xuema looked at Rongyue Tianlan's blue robe that was faintly inlaid with gold. She smiled and said, "Island Master Rongyue, you look quite shiny today." Xinjiuli turned the wine glass and looked at Rongyu Tianlan up and down. He said slowly, "Rongyu, congratulations on successfully passing the tribulation and becoming a mighty immortal." Rongyue Tianlan rolled up her sleeves. Thank you. Ning Xuema thought of the extremely abnormal thunderbolts and lightning that she saw when the Wangchuan Peak collapsed in Jiyue Nation. Her heart skipped a beat. Could that lightning be the thunder of his tribulation? The commotion caused by the battle was truly huge. She didn't know if his original body was struck by lightning. Ning Xuema looked at Rongyue Tianlan's expression and asked the question in her heart, "Were you struck by lightning during your tribulation?" Rongyue Tianlan pondered for a while. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows with her fan. "This matter is a little strange. I was supposed to be struck by golden lightning when I passed the tribulation to become a mighty immortal. However, maybe because I wasn't on the mainland, I was only struck by lightning in my dream. What's more strange is that in my dream, I was still fighting with my strength to attract the lightning. It was as if I was seeking death." Chapter 26:20. Luckily it was just a dream. When I woke up, I realized that I was still on the bed, but there was a mark on my body indicating that I had successfully passed the tribulation. Ever since he was born, he had gone through all kinds of tribulations. As his level increased, the tribulations he went through became more and more intense. The last time he went through the tribulation, he was almost turned into a piece of charcoal by the divine thunder. Even his parents couldn't recognize him. He had always been lazy and didn't have any big ambitions. He just liked to travel and play. He felt that his ability as a monarch god was enough for him to do these things freely. Therefore, after he became a monarch god, he stopped cultivating. Every day he just made tea and incense. He was very carefree. However, he didn't expect that when a person was lucky, even the gods couldn't stop him. He actually succeeded in passing the tribulation in his dream. After he woke up, not a single strand of his hair was out of place. This made him very gratified. The only thing that made him unhappy was that some irrelevant images would occasionally appear in his mind. Although they were fragmented, his usually peaceful mind was affected. What made him even more confused was that when he woke up, he realized that his face was full of tears. He felt an inexplicable sense of loss in his heart. It was as if he had lost something very important and couldn't find it back. Obviously, he succeeded in passing the tribulation in his dream and didn't suffer much. It should have been something worth celebrating, but his mood was very low. Thus, he wandered around the courtyard to get rid of his bad mood. In the end, he saw the heavenly path stone drill out from the ground like a cannonball. Rongyu Yushinlin and Xinjiuli were good friends, so Rongyu Yushinlin had nothing to fear from Xinjiuli. He told Dizwa about what had happened after he had passed the heavenly tribulation. In the end, he said, "Dizwa, don't you think that passing the heavenly tribulation and becoming a mighty immortal is something worth celebrating? Why am I always in a bad mood?" Xinjiuli pondered for a moment and replied with 3 words, "Are you homesick?" Rongyu Yushinlin was speechless. Xinjiuli added, "If you miss home, then go back. In any case, you have become a supreme immortal. Now that you go back, you can be considered returning home in glory." Rongyu Yushinlin sneered and opened his fan. "I'm not interested in returning home in glory. My family might not be looking forward to me returning home in glory." Xinjiuli slowly took a sip of wine and said, "That's not necessarily true. Your little fiancé might be looking forward to your return in glory. Rong Yuetian choked on her tea. A moment later, he rubbed his forehead and helplessly said, Dizwa, you are making fun of Xiao Xian again. That girl's milk is still there, so do you know what it means to return home in glory? Xinjiuli looked at him thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Rongyue Tianlan was a little flustered by his scrutiny. She tidied her clothes and asked, Why is Dizwa looking at me like that? Xinjiuli leisurely sized him up from head to toe and then from toe to head. Only then did he slowly open his mouth and say, From what I see, there should be a red Luan star movement in you recently. The peach blossom should be blooming soon. Rongyue Tianlan waved her fan and smiled elegantly. I won't hide it from Dizwa. This little deity's luck with women has always been flourishing. Every time I go out I always attract one or two. Xinjiuli said, The peach blossoms this time are different. Your fated one should be arriving. Rongyue Tianlan was startled. He knew that Xinjiuli was proficient in algebra, and nothing that he said wasn't true. Rongyue Tianlan immediately became interested. Then may I ask Dizwa, who is this little deity's fated one? As he asked this, a pale pink figure flashed across his mind. His heart inexplicably twisted. Chapter 26-21. He originally wanted to make a joke about the ancestor, but after that beautiful figure flashed by, he couldn't make that joke anymore. Xinjiuli kept him in suspense at this time. Heaven's secret can't be revealed. Rongyue Tianlan sat in place for a moment and suddenly sighed, Maybe I should really go back. Xinjiuli raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Rongyue Tianlan continued, It's better for me to go back and think of a way to cancel that marriage. Xinjiuli smiled and didn't say anything. Ning Xuema was curious. Although she had known Rongyue Tianlan for a long time, she knew very little about his background. She only knew that he didn't belong to any sect and didn't participate in any affairs of this continent. He was very free and easy. She thought he was like the Almighty, born without parents on this continent. It turned out that he also had a family and even a fiancé. She didn't know what his family was. She hadn't heard of any powerful family on this continent with the surname Rongyue. Island Master Rongyue actually has a family? I wonder which country it is in. Listening to your conversation, you have a fiancé? Ning Xuema asked. Rongyue Tianlan sighed and said, I originally didn't belong to this continent. I escaped from my marriage. Forget it, your husband knows this. Let him tell you. He seemed somewhat dispirited and helpless. Ning Xuema looked at the Almighty beside her and then looked at him again. She said decisively, The Almighty's words are too concise and comprehensive. I want to hear more details. It's better if you say it yourself. Who knows, I might be able to give you some ideas. She didn't want to listen to stories from Xinjiuli's mouth. The Almighty only gave a brief summary of the story. 2 or 3 sentences could summarize a person's life. What kind of story with ups and downs was like plain water in his mouth? Her words made Rongyue Tianlan very happy. He waved his fan and laughed, Dizwa, why don't I say it myself? Xinjiuli glanced at him lightly and said indifferently, His story is actually quite boring. You don't have to listen to his embellishment. I'll tell you. He was indeed not from this continent. He came from the Sanskrit continent and was the 8th son of the Eastern Sky Great Emperor who was in charge of the world's flowers and plants. The Eastern Sky's big emperor system is hereditary. The son inherits the father's business. The 3 older brothers above all have great talent and bold vision, fighting for the position of crown prince until their heads are broken and blood is shed. This island master Rongyu is relatively aloof from worldly affairs, and did not participate in this inheritance war. However, he has many crafty ideas, wide connections and strong martial arts. He is the object of the 3 older brothers' struggle to win over, causing this island master Rongyu to be unable to bear it any longer. He has always been traveling outside, not participating in political disputes. More than 3,000 years ago the Eastern Sky King, I don't know who he believed, but he said that the daughter of the Southern Sky King's family was not only beautiful, but also had the ability to bring prosperity to her husband's family. As a result, the Eastern Sky King had the idea of a marriage alliance with the Southern Sky King. It just so happened that Island Master Rongyu's 3 elder brothers had already married their first wives, so the important task of forming a marriage alliance fell on Island Master Rongyu. Island Master Rongyu didn't want to be a chess piece and refused to agree. Being urged by the Eastern Sky King in all kinds of ways, he had no choice but to flee without a trace. With this escape, he directly escaped from the Fanine continent and came here. It was rare for the great god to say so much in one breath, so Ning Xuema wasn't stingy in giving him a thumbs up. She then turned her head to look at Rongyue Dunlan. Island Master Rongyu, I feel that you being used as a chess piece for a marriage alliance is quite tragic and not in line with your style. However, since the rumor has it that the daughter of the Southern Sky King is beautiful, and also has the life of bringing prosperity to her husband, then it definitely can't be bad. Chapter 26-22. Island Lord Rongyue, I think it's sad that you were used as a chess piece in a marriage alliance. It doesn't suit your style. But since it's rumored that the daughter of the Southern Heaven Great Emperor is beautiful and has the fortune of bringing good fortune to her husband, she can't be bad. Maybe she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Why don't you meet her first? Maybe she's really the right person for you? Rongyue Tianlan sneered. Beautiful? Her elder sisters may be beautiful, but is she ugly? Not necessarily. She was only half a year old when the marriage was proposed. She was still a little girl whose teeth hadn't grown out yet. Ning Xuema. That's too perverted. They actually allowed you to molest a baby. Rongyue Tianlan? His lips twitched. You can't say that. In fact, it was only an engagement at that time. If they wanted to get married, they had to wait until she was an adult. Well, you said you needed to break off the engagement. Did you run away after the engagement? Rongyue Tianlan shook his head. No, I ran away first. My family used my birth characters to propose marriage, and the other party agreed. Shinjiuli slowly added, according to the rules of the Fanning continent, once a man and a woman are engaged, they will automatically be engraved on a specific totem pole. Unless both parties voluntarily break off the engagement, they can't remarry. If they break the contract, they will be severely punished by the totem pole. Rongyue Tianlan was surprised. Dizwa, how do you know so much about the Fanning continent? He didn't tell Shinjiuli about these things. Shinjiuli took a sip of tea. A few years ago, I accidentally went there and saw your family. Rongyue Tianlan almost dropped the fan in his hand. Dizwa, how come I've never heard you mention it? Shinjiuli didn't have any expression on his face, because I'm not a gossipy person. Rongyue Tianlan, Shinjiuli leisurely added, since you're curious, I'll tell you more. Your family has never given up looking for you for so many years. The little princess engraved on the pillar of marriage with you is also looking for you while gnashing her teeth. Rongyue Tian was puzzled. She's just a little girl who hasn't even shed her hair. Why is she looking for me? Shinjiuli placed the flute in his hand on Rongyue Tianlan's shoulder and said earnestly, she also wants to break off the engagement with you. Also, she's now 3,000 years old. In the Fanning continent, this age is already considered an old lady. Now that you have escaped, you are free and unfettered, but she has no choice but to live in the name of your fiancé. When you escaped back then, in order to make the marriage proposal go smoothly, your imperial father said that you were only going out to study and would return in 300 to 500 years. Later on, he said that you were in a critical stage of cultivation and dragged it on for another few hundred years. Just like that, the princess has turned into an old maid. Ning Xuema was indignant on behalf of the girl. Rongyue, you are too unkind. You forcefully dragged a cute little girl into an old maid. This hatred isn't small. You can't blame her for gnashing her teeth and looking for you. Shinjiuli flicked his sleeves and added fuel to the fire. It's fine if it's just dragging her into an old maid. The most terrible thing is the rumors about her. What rumors? Ning Xuema echoed him. Because he ran away from the marriage and didn't come back for thousands of years, the people of the Fanning continent spread rumors that this girl must have a hidden disease that can't be seen. She actually made her fiancé run away from the marriage and not come back for so many years. Chapter 26-23. Ning Xuema clenched her fists. This rumor is really terrible. It must be very difficult for a girl to live with such a reputation. She probably wants to chop her fiancé into pieces. Rongyue Tianlan was speechless. He finally sighed. Forget it. I'll go back and solve this matter in a few days. Actually, 3,000 years old is not considered an old lady. As long as this engagement is cancelled, she can still find a good family to marry. Shinjiuli asked him, you haven't even seen the girl, and you've already made up your mind to cancel the engagement? Rongyue Tianlan was stunned. The figure of the girl in pink flashed across his mind again. He couldn't see the face of the girl in pink clearly, but he inexplicably agreed with her. He felt that if his red Luan star really moved, it should be because of the girl in pink. Then there was no need to delay the other girl. After all, the girl was also innocent. When he went back, he would explain this matter while canceling the engagement. He would tell the world that it was his fault and not the girl's fault. If possible, he could also be a matchmaker for the girl. He had many friends in the Fanine continent, and there was no lack of outstanding young talents among them. Since you don't mean to, then there's no need to meet. Rangi Yuishinlin's answer was straightforward. Even though he felt sorry for the girl, he could only cut the Gordian knot. The banquet didn't end until the moon rose in the east. Early the next morning, Rangi Yuishinlin came to Shinjiuli with 2 dark circles under his eyes. He entrusted all the flowers, birds, insects and fish on his island to Shinjiuli as if he was an orphan. He was afraid that Shinjiuli didn't understand these things, so he made a detailed list of all kinds of taboos. Ning Shuima looked at the lines of words and felt a little dizzy. Island Lord, are you going to be gone for a long time? Rangi Yuishinlin sighed. The Fanine continent is a little far from here. It will take a few months on the road. Besides, canceling the engagement will implicate some people. I have to deal with it properly before I can come back. When are you leaving? Shinjiuli didn't look at the list. No. Rangi Yuishinlin bowed to Shinjiuli, turned around and strode out. It turns out that he's also an impatient person. Ning Shuima couldn't help but laugh. He actually came back just like that. He's probably afraid of wasting a day of the girl's youth, Shinjiuli replied. He's been delayed for more than 3,000 years, so he's not in a hurry. However, Almighty, his battle soul should have returned, right? He had already succeeded in transcending the tribulation. But from the looks of it, he doesn't seem to remember Jiyu. Ning Shuima thought of the pitiful girl and felt a little sad. Once the soul returns, it will not have any memories. It's not strange that he doesn't remember. Shinjiuli explained to her. Then their story will truly come to an end there. What a pity. I always thought that they would have a happy ending. Ning Shuima sighed. Shinjiuli held her in his arms and said, 9 out of 10 things in the world don't go your way. How can there be so many beautiful flowers and full moons? Sai, I can only blame Jun Liuye for being too greedy for power and being too jealous. If he had quietly told Jiyu when he was supervising the execution of Jiyu Nation's monarch and his wife, she wouldn't have gone crazy. Maybe they could have been loving each other for the rest of their lives. Even if it was because of jealousy that he didn't say anything in advance when he wanted to punish her, he should have exposed Jiyu's conspiracy when she came to find him after she woke up. Chapter 26-24. Since he had seen through Jiyu's plot, he should have exposed it on the spot, or told Jiyu the truth that her parents were not dead. That way, even if Jiyu did not believe it, she would still want to verify it. Then there would not have been any later. However, after he saw through it, he immediately came up with another plan. He wanted to use Jiyu's revenge to lure out the king of Xingyu country and eliminate him. For this, he did not hesitate to use the trick of injuring himself. He did succeed, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. He thought this was a good plan that could let Jiyu vent her anger and also get rid of his opponent. However, he did not know that after Jiyu killed him, she became disheartened and activated the poison in her body, making things completely irreversible. Shinjiuli said, the reincarnation of a warrior's soul is his first instinct. It was originally an accident that he fell in love with Princess Jiyu. Then, great God, did Princess Jiyu's soul really dissipate? Ning Shuima was still confused about this. Shinjiuli smiled and said slowly, actually, Princess Jiyu's origin is similar to Jun Liuye's. Ning Shuima's heart skipped a beat. She reacted quickly and immediately said, could it be that she is also the reincarnation of a goddess? Shinjiuli said, smart girl. However, it might not be a soul dissipation. He peeled a walnut and put it in her hand as a reward. Ning Shuima's curiosity was piqued. She grabbed his hand and asked, which goddess? Do we know each other? If it's not a soul dissipation, then what is it? Shinjiuli curved his lips. Maybe it's an obsession or maybe it's an out-of-body dream. He then added, I heard that Rong Yu's fiancé is called Ji Xinyu. Pada. The teacup in Ning Shuima's hand fell to the ground. It seemed to be a little lively. The mountain was not high, but it was famous because of immortals. The water was not deep, but it was famous because of dragons. Although the immortal cloud mountain had the word, immortal, in its name, it was actually a barren place. Throughout history, only demons and devils resided there. Occasionally, an immortal would appear, and they were all here to vanquish demons and devils. In the depths of the immortal cloud mountain, there was a coiling dragon stream. Within the coiling dragon stream, there was indeed a flood dragon that was said to have cultivated for 1,000 years. This flood dragon was a passing flood dragon. It came here a year ago. Probably because the scenery here was to its liking, it actually stayed here and didn't leave. This flood dragon was extremely ferocious. It had the ability to spit out clouds and mist. Whatever it saw, it would swallow. Most of the creatures in the mountain had been swallowed by it. Even the various demons and devils had been swallowed by it. Not only that, but it also often went down the mountain to eat the passers-by. After the demonic wind passed, an entire village would become its food. This immortal cloud mountain was the South Heaven Thearch's territory. With such a ferocious creature appearing in his territory, the South Heaven Thearch naturally had a headache. He sent many capable soldiers and experts to get rid of it. However, this flood dragon was too powerful and too cunning. These people were either not its match and were swallowed by it, or it escaped in advance after receiving the news. After searching the entire mountain, they couldn't find it. In this way, this flood dragon became a huge problem for the South Heaven Thearch. However, he didn't have a way to get rid of it. He could only order all the villagers within a dozen miles of the Immortal Cloud Mountain to be moved out. The Immortal Cloud Mountain was also strictly prohibited from entering and exiting. The South Heaven Thearch's side was proficient in fire techniques. However, this flood dragon was of the water element. Moreover, this water element was not small. Water could suppress fire, so the people on the South Heaven Thearch's side suffered a lot from this flood dragon. The South Heaven Thearch had 4 daughters. The eldest and second daughters were all married, and they married very well. Chapter 26-25. The eldest daughter was married to a general of the South Sky Emperor with outstanding military achievements. The second daughter was married to the eldest prince of the North Sky Emperor, and it was said that their martial arts were also very good. Only the third daughter, Jianghu, was unmarried and became a joke. When the Immortal Cloud Mountain was troubled by the flood dragon, the 2 sons-in-law naturally volunteered to lead troops to capture the flood dragon, intending to get rid of the evil for the people. However, because of various reasons, they returned in low spirits. Not only did they fail to get rid of the evil dragon, but they also lost many of their proud subordinates. These 2 were well-known figures of the continent, but they also returned in failure, which made the dragon even more famous. Many famous immortals came one after another, wanting to get rid of the evil dragon. However, most of them basically came but did not leave. Their lives were buried in the dragon's mouth. After a long time, this place became the forbidden area of the entire Fanine continent. This flood dragon was not only cruel but also very greedy. After it took over the entire Immortal Cloud Mountain, it did not give up. In the past month, it began to expand its territory, frequently attacking cities and towns dozens of miles away from Mount Lee. 10 days ago, it caused the biggest tragedy. It devoured and killed the people of a city, and more than 100,000 people died tragically under the dragon's claws and mouth. According to the official's report, the entire small city was razed to the ground, and the ground was full of disemboweled corpses. The originally bustling small city became hell on earth overnight. This tragedy shocked the entire Fanine continent, and also made the South Sky Emperor very angry. That day he flew into a rage in the imperial court, and even his most proud son-in-law Lu Zhongxiao was scolded by him. Lu Zhongxiao was very angry and complained a little when he returned home, which made his wife Ji Shenluo very unhappy. The next day she returned to her maternal home, and her second sister Ji Shenmeng was also there. The 2 sisters naturally talked about the flood dragon, and the more they talked, the angrier they became. They could not help but praise their son-in-law, saying that they had done their best, and that the dragon was too abnormal. They also had a lot to say about their father. This made the Empress very unhappy, and she could not help but scold them a little. This made the 2 sisters immediately unhappy. They were born of the South Sky Emperor's concubine, and the children born of concubines were often inferior and arrogant, so their temperament was a little harsh. At this moment, when they heard the Empress's reprimand, they felt very indignant. Ji Shenluo put on a fake smile and said, "You're right, Imperial Mother. We shouldn't complain about Imperial Father." However, we were too worried about the flood dragon. As the saying goes, capable people do more work and capable people are easily blamed. Just like my husband, he was clearly overwrought with this matter, but he was still reprimanded by Imperial Father. Of course, as the younger generation, even if we are reprimanded, we can't say anything else. From the looks of it, little sister is still the best. Although she has a famous husband, that husband ran away from the marriage. Now there's no need for anyone to complain. Ji Shenming also agreed, "That's right. It seems like little sister is more fortunate. Although it's a bit embarrassing that her husband ran away, she won't have to be scolded this time." The Empress was rendered speechless by the 2 of them. The little sister they were talking about was Ji Xinyu, born of the Empress. It was said that when she was born, there were 16 phoenixes flying in the sky. She was seen as an auspicious sign by the South Sky clan, and the South Sky Emperor doted on her a lot. When she was still an infant, he arranged a good marriage for her. In the eyes of the two sisters, their little sister was simply the embodiment of all the love in the world, making others jealous. Chapter 26-26. It wasn't until the 8th prince of the East Sky Emperor, who was rumored to be the most handsome, stylish and capable man in the Fanning continent, Rong Yu Tianlan, ran away from the marriage that the halo that the heavens had placed on Ji Xinyue's head truly disappeared, and as time passed, this little princess gradually became a laughingstock. No matter where this little princess went, she would receive people's pity or gloating gazes, as well as all kinds of unbearable rumors. Of course, more than half of these rumors were secretly spread by Ji Xinluo and Ji Xinyue. What Ji Xinyue was unbearably rude, what Ji Xinyue had a hidden illness, what Ji Xinyue was destined to bring bad luck to her husband and children. This rumor spread more and more widely, directly turning Ji Xinyue, a proud daughter of heaven, into a joke of the Nantian clan. Gradually, even the Nantian emperor didn't like this third daughter very much, and even became cold to Ji Xinyue's birth mother, the empress. He treated Ji Xinluo and Ji Xinming better and better, and doted on their mother, consort He. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't find the empress' fault, and that the empress's family was quite powerful in the Fanning continent, the empress's position would have been snatched away by consort He. The empress and her daughter had a delicate position in the palace, and the empress could only tolerate these two princesses who weren't her own. This time, if it wasn't for Ji Xinluo and Ji Xinming's words, the empress wouldn't have interfered. Now that she was refuted by the two women's strange words, she actually had nothing to say, and was so angry that her face faintly turned green. She could only rejoice in her heart that her daughter wasn't in the palace and didn't have to listen to the two sisters' nonsense. The daughters of the Nantian clan were only considered adults when they were 1,000 years old. When Ji Xinyue was 500 years old, she gradually became a laughingstock because of Rong Yu Tianlan running away from the marriage, and was often laughed at by her sisters in the palace. She was probably depressed in her heart and often fell sick, becoming a sickly person. Later, the priest of the Nantian clan suddenly received a heavenly decree, saying that Ji Xinyue, the little princess, had to leave the palace and become a disciple to grow up, and could not return before she was 1,000 years old. The Nantian emperor listened to the priest and sent Ji Xinyue out of the palace to become a disciple of a rather famous sect in the Fanning continent. She was gone for 500 years. When she returned 500 years later, she had already grown into a slender and elegant young lady. She was used to being outside, so she was not used to returning to the palace. Therefore, although she could come back, she was not willing to. She could not return home even once in 100 years. When they came back, they would stay for a couple of days before leaving, just like visiting relatives. Just as the empress was rejoicing, the little palace maid outside ran in and reported, "Congratulations, your majesty, the third princess is back." The empress's eyes lit up. She hadn't seen her daughter for nearly 100 years. Naturally, she missed her very much. She couldn't help but stand up and was about to say something. Ji Xinluo chuckled from the side, "Oh, third sister, you really came at a time like this." Ji Xinming also smiled and said, "Third sister probably heard about the flood dragon and came back to share imperial father's worries. What a pity. What was the use of a little girl like her coming back? If she could be more charming and attract her fiancé, maybe she could be of some use." "Second sister, don't joke. That divine Lord Rongyu has been missing for more than 3,000 years. If he wanted to come back, he would have come back long ago. Maybe he has already married and had children outside and forgotten about our little sister's marriage. It's just a pity that our little sister is still waiting for him." Chapter 26-27. That's true, poor third sister. The two of them talked back and forth without restraint. The empress was so angry that her face turned green. She was about to reprimand them when a clear voice came from outside. "Sisters, do you feel uncomfortable if you don't gossip about old topics? Do you feel suffocated?" Following the voice, a young girl in a light red dress appeared. Her long hair was like clouds and her face was like jade. Her eyes were as clear as autumn water, and her lips were like cherry blossoms. She was so beautiful that people couldn't take their eyes off her. Ji Xinluo and Ji Xinming were already rare beauties, but when they stood next to this young girl, they automatically became background decorations. What was even rarer was her temperament. There was purity in her carelessness and sharpness in her laziness. These were clearly very contradictory qualities, but they were organically combined on her, and didn't give off any sense of contradiction. At this moment her pretty face was slightly gloomy, and her eyes fell on Ji Shenluo and Ji Shenming, giving off a kind of domineering aura. It made Ji Shenluo and Ji Shenming's hearts turn cold. This young girl was Ji Xinyue, the third princess of South Heaven Emperor. Her words were not polite at all, and she didn't give the two sisters any face. Ji Shenluo and Ji Shenming were stunned for a moment, and their pretty faces turned red. Third sister, how can you talk to your sister like that? We are worried for your good, that's why we are worried about you. Yes, we also feel sorry for you. Ji Shenluo and Ji Shenming began to echo each other again. Ji Xinyue frowned slightly and said straightforwardly, "Thank you, but you don't need to worry and feel sorry for me. You two just need to take care of your husband's family. You don't need to worry about these things. To be honest, I am the Heaven's Mandate Princess, and you are the Earth's Mandate Princess. You have no right to interfere in my matters." The Heaven's Mandate Princess was the princess of the main line, while the Earth's Mandate Princess was born from a concubine. Even if Ji Xinyue wasn't liked by her father now, but her status was there. Once she established her power, no one else could say anything. Ji Shenluo and her sister were rendered speechless by her words. Their faces turned green and white for a moment before they spat out, "You don't know what's good for you." Then they hurriedly left. Because of their anger, they even forgot to bid farewell to the Empress. Ji Shenyu said coldly, "Little sister, I heard that the two of you have always been reasonable. How could you forget the rules of conduct at this time? Or are the two of you looking down on the Empress?" Ji Shenluo and the other girl felt as if they had been slapped in the face, but they couldn't refute the other party's words. After staying in place for a while, she finally reluctantly bowed and bid farewell to the Empress. Only then did she glare at Ji Shenyu and turn around to leave. Before he left, he muttered, "What are you so proud of? She's just an abandoned woman who no one wants." Ji Shenyu didn't take it to heart. She had heard such words so often that she was already numb to them. When the Empress saw that her daughter's expression was normal, she was relieved. She was still somewhat gratified. When Ji Shenyu was young, she was doted on by everyone. She was lively, intelligent, and had a cheerful personality. But as more and more unpleasant rumors about her spread inside and outside the palace, she became more and more aware of human affairs. Her personality also became more and more sensitive and suspicious. Gradually, she even lost her self-confidence. She became more and more silent, more and more eccentric, and more disliked by her father. It wasn't until she left the palace that she came back as a different person after 500 years of learning outside. Finally, she became lively and cheerful again. Chapter 26-28. But perhaps because of the environment, her personality had a lot of characteristics, such as sharp words, confidence, and laziness. Even if she didn't speak, she was like a shining object, unknowingly attracting the attention of many people. Even the South Sky Emperor's attitude towards her was much better. Those gossips had once hurt her deeply, but now she could laugh at those gossips and no longer take them to heart. After the mother and son talked for a while, Ji Shenyu casually asked, "This son heard that an evil dragon appeared in the immortal Cloud Mountain and made father very worried?" The Empress' expression darkened, but she didn't hide it from her daughter. She told her about how the evil dragon had wreaked havoc in the past year and finally sighed, "I don't know where this evil dragon came from, but it's actually so powerful. Your father has been worried day and night because of this. However, in the vast Sanskrit continent, no one was able to deal with it. Even your master went out a few days ago, but he didn't succeed. He even got seriously injured. I wonder if he's feeling better now?" Ji Shenyu nodded slightly and said, "Master is much better." This son only knew about this from master. Otherwise she wouldn't have hurried back. Ji Shenyu's master was the sect master of the Purple Cloud sect, a famous cultivation sect. The sect master's martial arts were extremely high, and he was one of the top experts in the Sanine continent. Even he had to return in defeat, so who could subdue that evil dragon? No wonder the South Sky Emperor had a big headache. As the mother and son were talking, the South Sky Emperor probably heard the news of the three women's return and rushed over. The father and daughter hadn't seen each other for 100 years. After greeting him, Ji Shenyu's expression was indifferent, and she had nothing to say. The South Sky Emperor looked at his daughter with a slightly complicated expression. This daughter used to be his pride, but now she was the laughingstock of the entire South Sky clan. And because of this, he couldn't help but take out his anger on his daughter, and became colder and colder to her, causing the relationship between father and daughter to drift apart. In fact, how could that matter be blamed on his daughter? His daughter was the one who was truly innocent. Not only did she have to endure the rumors outside, but she also had to be treated coldly at home. No wonder she didn't want to come back even after finishing her apprenticeship. By the time the South Heaven Emperor realized his mistake and wanted to get closer to his daughter, it was already too late. Just now, he had heard his daughter talking and laughing with the Empress outside the palace gates. But after he came in, his daughter's little face seemed to be wearing a mask. Her expression was indifferent and cold, and her words to him were polite and distant. This made him feel a little uncomfortable. He tried his best to talk to her kindly, asking her about her recent learning and what happened in the Ziyun sect. He asked a lot of questions, but his daughter only gave brief answers. After exchanging 7 or 8 sentences, the father and daughter pair had nothing more to say. The atmosphere was a little stiff and cold. In order to smooth things over, the Empress changed the topic. Ji Xinyu pondered for a moment, then decided to change the topic to the evil flood dragon. Father, what kind of abilities does that evil flood dragon have? How many generals in the imperial court had ever fought against it? What are its characteristics? This was the most annoying thing for the South Heaven Emperor. The Empress didn't even dare to mention it in front of him for fear of upsetting him even more. She didn't expect her daughter to ask about it so openly. Her heart sank and she hurriedly glanced at her daughter, signaling her not to ask about it. Ji Xinyu acted as if she didn't see it, and continued to ask questions about the evil flood dragon, such as its attributes and characteristics. Chapter 26-29. South Sky Emperor's expression turned ugly as he said impatiently, "Why is a girl like you asking about other people's business? You should learn more about needlework from your sisters." Girls in this world also knew immortal spells, but most of them were related to needlework. For example, they could make the most beautiful brocade by forging heavenly shuttles, or they could make lifelike embroidery by cultivating divine needles, or they could make the most delicious dishes by cultivating culinary skills. Ji Xinyu's eldest sister and second sister were good at embroidery and cooking respectively. Eldest brother-in-law's brocade robe was personally sewn by eldest sister, and every time he wore it he would attract a lot of envy. Second brother-in-law especially liked to eat his wife's stir-fried dishes, and he would occasionally call his friends back to let his wife cook. Naturally, his friends would praise his wife. They all praised South Sky Emperor for teaching his daughter well, adding a lot of color to South Sky Emperor's face. However, Ji Xinyu was different. She didn't like to dress up, she liked to play with swords and spears. When she was young, she never lost a fight with boys and even became the king of the children. However, she didn't know needlework or the 4 arts that represented a woman's elegance. She was clearly a great beauty, but she liked to play with men's things. This was also seen as one of the reasons why Divine Lord Rongyu ran away from her marriage. The outside world even said that she was a tomboy and wouldn't be liked by any man. South Sky Emperor thought of those rumors and became even more unhappy, so he scolded her. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. Like before, when she heard her father scolding her like this, she would tactfully keep quiet and stop asking questions. This time she didn't give up. "Father, how is this other people's business? This evil dragon is a disaster, we must find a way to get rid of it. I'm asking because I want to share your worries." South Sky Emperor didn't expect her to refute like this, and became even more impatient. "The entire imperial court is helpless about this matter. How can a weak woman like you share my worries? Don't cause trouble. I really want to share your worries. If you really want to share your worries, then call your fiancé here. He was once the #1 expert of the continent, maybe he has a way." South Sky Emperor blurted out again. "Ji Xinyu?" She pursed her lips and didn't say anything else. The South Heaven the Arch also realized his slip of the tongue and became even more irritated. He didn't know what to do. "Is elder sister back?" A delicate female voice came from the entrance of the hall, and a girl in pink came bouncing in. This girl looked like a human child, about 11 or 12 years old. She was wearing a delicate pink dress. Her eyes were big and her mouth was small. When she jumped in, it was as if she brought along sunlight. She was a little reckless. When she entered the door, she tripped over the threshold and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, the South Sky Emperor's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He caught the girl in time and held her in his arms. He couldn't help but scold her. "Tianyu, don't be so careless." Although he was reprimanding her, the expression on his face was very loving. He even checked her little feet with concern. His concern was obvious. This girl was the youngest daughter of the South Heaven Emperor Jianghu. She was 500 years old this year and was not yet an adult. She was at the age when she was still young and naive. She looked like an adorable pink dumpling. Every time the South Heaven Emperor saw her, all of his troubles would be temporarily put aside. Jianghu watched from the side and was momentarily dazed. After hearing the Empress cry, he couldn't help but feel even more irritated. I'm doing this for her own good. It's not good for a girl like her to always play with swords and sticks. I don't need her to appear in public and lead troops to war. Wasn't the reason why Xinyu was able to cultivate martial arts because you sent her to the Purple Cloud sect? How could he not cultivate there? I sent her there in the hope that she wouldn't be so ill. She only needs to cultivate a little to strengthen her body. Needlework is more important for girls so that she can find a good husband in the future. But that Rongyue Tianlan has already run away from the marriage and we can't find her. How can we cancel this marriage? If we don't cancel the marriage, our Xinyu won't be able to arrange another marriage. The Empress couldn't help but grit her teeth when she mentioned this. Chapter 26:31. The South Sky Emperor rubbed the space between his eyebrows. I have already discussed this with the East Sky Emperor. According to the rules of our Fanine continent, if the parties involved are not present, as long as the engagement exceeds 3,500 years and the marriage has not yet been consummated, the parents of both parties can cancel the engagement. At that time, the East Sky Emperor also feels very guilty about this matter. He has already promised me that after canceling the engagement between Xinyu and that little bastard, he will make the decision to arrange a good marriage for Xinyu. The East Sky Emperor has a distant nephew who is proficient in both civil and martial arts and holds an important position in the East Sky clan. The East Sky Emperor wanted to betroth Xinyu to him. We have already asked around. That child is the same age as Xinyu, so he is indeed not bad. He was also worthy of Xinyu. It's just that our Mystic Moon continent doesn't do needlework all day long, and instead plays with swords and spears. In the end, it's not a problem. I was angry that she didn't fight, so I reprimanded her. She is also my daughter, how can I not love her? These words made the Empress feel a lot better. She said hatefully, originally our daughter was the most outstanding. When she was just born, all kinds of auspicious signs appeared. Originally, it was the mother of the nation's destiny. At that time, there were many princes from several countries who came to propose marriage. If it wasn't for that Rongyue Tianlan, our daughter might have become the crown princess and been married for a long time. Now she can only be the wife of a marquis. This Rongyue Tianlan has really made our daughter suffer. The South Heaven Emperor sighed and said no more. At that time, Rongyue Tianlan was a famous young genius in the Fanine continent. He had cultivated to the rank of a god at a young age. He was the most influential person in the continent and the man that thousands of girls in the continent wanted to marry the most. It was precisely because he was so outstanding that when the East Sky Emperor came to propose on behalf of his son, he did not hesitate to agree. Who would have thought? This topic was too heavy, so the South Heaven Emperor opened his mouth to say something else. Outside, the head eunuch rushed in and reported a shocking piece of news. The 8th prince of the East Sky Emperor, Rongyue Tianlan, who had left home for more than 3,000 years, had returned. The South Heaven Emperor was so excited that his hands were shaking. That bastard was finally back. He immediately ordered the head chief, quickly invite the 3rd princess over. The Empress was even more excited. She didn't know whether she should be happy or sad. If that person came back, there might be hope for his daughter's marriage. Regardless of whether it was successful or not, there had to be an explanation. He didn't have to let his daughter wait foolishly for the 3,500 years. When that brat returns, he should be able to give us an explanation soon, right? He had to teach that bastard a good lesson. Only then would he be worthy of his daughter's many years of waiting. She wanted to tell her daughter the good news herself and let her know that her bitter days were over. A moment later, the attendants ran back to report. Reporting to your majesty, your highness, the 3rd princess has already left the palace. We don't know where she went. We've already sent people to look for her. Did his daughter really leave again? He had only been back for less than an hour. The Empress immediately activated the voice-transmitting talisman that she often used to contact her daughter, but for some reason it didn't connect. There was no response from the other side. It was clear that his daughter had also turned off the voice transmission talisman. The Empress angrily glared at the South Heaven Emperor. The South Heaven Emperor coughed. She has probably returned to the Purple Cloud sect. We will contact the sect master of the Purple Cloud sect. When Xinyu returns, we will tell her this news and have her quickly return. South Sky Emperor used a sound transmission talisman to talk to the Purple Cloud sect master. The Purple Cloud sect master readily agreed, and even said that he would use the Purple Cloud sect's special sound transmission talisman to contact Ji Xinyu. Chapter 2632. However, an hour later, the sect master of the Purple Cloud sect sent a message saying that he couldn't contact his disciple either. Ji Xinyu seemed to have turned off all her communication talismans. The South Sky Emperor panicked. Where could this child go? Could she be suicidal? She couldn't be, right? Perhaps this child had suffered too much in the past few years, but her style of doing things was actually calm. Normal things couldn't stimulate her at all. It was impossible for her to commit suicide after being reprimanded by her father. But why couldn't he contact her? The South Sky Emperor suddenly realized that he knew too little about this daughter of his. He didn't know her happiness, anger, sorrow, or joy, nor could he understand her emotions. He also didn't know if this was common. He could only contact the sect master of the Purple Cloud sect. The sect master told him that Ji Xinyu was very independent. She often went out alone to train. Sometimes, when she was fighting monsters or focused on something, she would turn off all her communication talismans. This was very common for her. With this as a backup, the South Sky Emperor finally felt relieved. However, a doubt arose in his heart. In such a short time, what kind of monster could she be fighting? Or was she focused on something else? A few stars hung in the sky, and a golden crescent moon hung diagonally in the sky. Some wind blew, making one's body feel slightly cold. The green glazed roof tiles shone faintly under the moonlight. This was an abandoned courtyard of a duke's mansion. The courtyard was covered in vegetation, and it was completely desolate. A place that had been abandoned for a long time would always have one or two scary ghost stories, so very few people came here. Only wild foxes and wild rabbits often appeared here. At this time, on the roof of a palace in the depths of this mansion, a young man was sitting leisurely. A jug of wine and a stack of documents were his personal belongings. This young man was Ji Xinyu, and the stack of documents was stolen from the imperial study. There was a thick stack of documents, and many of them were lengthy, all about the evil flood dragon. Most of the people who wrote these documents had fought with the flood dragon. Of course, in order to show off, there were many beautiful words describing the dangerous process, and how they risked their lives to not disgrace the imperial family. Ji Xinyu only read the important ones. She hated being disturbed the most when she was working, so not only did she turn off all the sound transmission talismans on her, she didn't even bother to light up a night pearl when she was reading. Fortunately, her internal energy was profound and her eyesight was good. Although it was under the dim moonlight, she could still see the densely packed words on the document very clearly. She took a sip of wine and read a book. By the time the entire gourd of wine had entered her stomach, she had almost finished reading the stack of books. She also gradually summed up the characteristics of the evil flood dragon from these long and smelly documents. For example, the size of his body, the strength of his demonic powers, the techniques he was proficient in. Although these documents were flashy and impractical, they were much better and more specific than her asking around randomly. She already had a general plan to deal with the evil flood dragon in her mind. The evil Jiao dragon was indeed an extremely difficult opponent to deal with, but after looking through the information, Ji Xinyu felt that she had some confidence in defeating it and taking its head. Of course, the chances of success were slim, but it was worth a try. All these years, she had used another identity to wander around the Sanskrit continent. She had fought countless ferocious beasts and vicious birds. Her experience was not ordinary. She even had the experience of defeating stronger opponents as the weak. As long as she did her homework in advance, she would often surprise people. Chapter 2633. As long as she did her homework beforehand and knew her enemy well, even if she couldn't win every battle, she would at least have a higher chance of winning. At the very least, if she couldn't win, she could run away in time. She closed her eyes and got up after a rough calculation in her mind. Picking up the wine gourd, she jumped down from the roof. She was going to eat a good meal and save her energy for tomorrow's work. It was not late and the streets were quite lively. The restaurant was not closed, and when Ji Xinyu went in, there were still more than half of the restaurant's customers drinking and eating. The more people there were, the more noisy and the more gossip there was. Ji Xinyu was too lazy to listen to the gossip and was about to go upstairs to find a quiet room to eat a good meal when a few voices made her stop. I heard that the Eastern Sky Clan's 8th prince has returned. That's right, I also heard about it. He has been missing for over 3,000 years and has finally returned. This person really is something, running away without saying a word and causing our 3rd princess to have a bad reputation, wasting her time until now. Will he come to our Nantian clan to propose? He and our 3rd princess are not young anymore, so they should be married by now. Humph, it's hard to say if he will marry the 3rd princess. After all, he ran away for so many years and I heard that he went to another continent. There aren't so many rules on the other continents, maybe he is already married. No, if he is married he will definitely bring his wife back, but I heard that he came back alone. With this kind of gossip circulating around, it naturally became the best topic of conversation for the common people. These people were chatting there, excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Ji Xinyu stood at the stairs with the wine gourd in her hand and listened for a while. Her lips slightly hooked and she turned around to walk up. That person is finally back. She thought that he could stay outside for 10,000 years. Now that he is back, her life will change and she will not be so free and unfettered in the future. There were less people upstairs and Ji Xinyu let out a sigh of relief. She was about to find a place to sit down and quietly eat a good meal. A voice suddenly sounded out in high spirits, "Xinyu." This voice was so familiar that the veins on Ji Xinyu's temples jumped and she raised her head to look in the direction of the voice. At the table by the window sat a young man with a slender figure and a picturesque appearance. It was already close to winter, yet he was still fanning a mountain and river fan in his hand, and every single move he made revealed a dissolute and showy aura. He was born with a pair of watery eyes and when they moved, they were even more alluring than a woman's. At this moment, his bewitching eyes landed on Ji Xinyu, smiling like a sunflower in the morning sun. "Brother Xin, what a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet you here. Come, sit here, sit here." He politely pulled out a chair. "Xin Xinyu, Xin, of course, Xin Xinyu, Xin Xinyu, Xin Ji Xin Ji of Xin, of the royal family." Ji Xinyu met him purely by chance. A few years ago she went to subdue a rebellious Baifeng bird and happened to meet Rongyue Tianhuan Ji Xinyu who was being chased by that bird. Ji Xinyu saved him and probably because she was too cool, Ji Xinyu was convinced. He wholeheartedly wanted to befriend her and often pestered her to drink wine and chat. He even wanted to become sworn brothers with her. Ji Xinyu walked outside as a man. She used a technique to slightly change her appearance and figure, so no one recognized her as a woman when she walked in the Jianghu. She changed her name to Xinyu and made friends with people, so she made a few friends. Chapter 2634. Rongyue Tianhuan was one of them. Ji Xinyu didn't want to have anything to do with the Rongyue family, so she treated Rongyue Tianhuan indifferently. She didn't want to have a deep relationship with him, but this Rongyue Tianhuan was like a dogskin plaster. He was very warm and sincere to her. She didn't want to hit a smiling person, so after a while, Ji Xinyu started to treat him as a friend. However, this guy was a bit noisy. Ji Xinyu sometimes got a headache from his noise, so she didn't want to see him too often. Recently she had been quite faded with this guy. In just half a month she had already met him twice. However, the last time she met him, he was very depressed as if he had lost his parents. Ji Xinyu asked him a few questions, but he seemed to have something he couldn't say, so he just sighed again and again. Ji Xinyu wasn't someone who liked to force others. Seeing that he wasn't willing to talk, she let it go. She didn't expect that when they met this time, he would be so happy, as if he was a poor scholar who became the top scholar. His eyes were filled with joy. The two of them drank a few cups and Ji Xinyu casually joked, "What are you so happy about? Did you get a wife?" Rongyue Tianhuan smiled like spring flowers blooming. "My cousin the 8th prince is back." Ji Xinyu? She naturally knew who Rongyue Tianhuan's 8th cousin was. She raised her hand and took a sip of tea. "I also heard about this, but what does his return have to do with you? Do you have to smile like that? This brat couldn't be secretly in love with his 8th brother, right? Although this world didn't prohibit homosexuality, he wasn't that old. He was the same age as her. When his 8th brother ran away, he wasn't even a year old and was still wearing diapers. How could he have fallen in love with him at that time? Could it be admiration?" Rongyue Tianhuan raised his hand and patted Ji Xinyu's shoulder, letting out a sigh of relief. "Now that he's back, I won't be forced to marry Ji Xinyu, that old aunt no one wants." Ji Xinyu spat out a mouthful of tea, spraying it all over Rongyue Tianhuan's face. "What?" Rongyue Tianhuan raised his sleeve and calmly wiped his face, saying, "You also think it's inconceivable, right?" Ji Xinyu coughed twice. It is indeed unbelievable. Who forced you to marry her? Rongyue Tianhuan sighed. Just half a month ago, our East Sky Emperor summoned me and personally issued a decree. He said that if 8th Imperial Brother didn't come back, I would propose to the Nantian clan in half a year and get engaged to that old grandaunt. Furthermore, I would have to choose a date to get married within 3 months. When this Marquis heard this, it was as if thunder had struck me. However, His Majesty's decree cannot be violated. My little arm can't twist the thigh, so I could only agree. But I was suffering in my heart and I couldn't tell anyone about it. I could only go out and get drunk. When we met, it was when I was the most hurt. I let Brother Shin see a joke. Come, I'll punish myself by drinking 3 cups as an apology. Ji Xinyu crossed her arms as she watched him drink 3 cups of strong liquor, her expression somewhat unreadable. Rongyue Tianhuan downed 3 cups, his handsome face was as red as a peach blossom. His eyes were also filled with peach blossom joy. It's good now, 8th Imperial Brother is back, he can settle his own fiancée. Your brother, finally don't have to pick up trash, I can be free for a few more years, haha. Trash? Ji Xinyu smiled and raised her wine cup. If that's the case, congratulations. Since you're so happy, then drink a few more cups. Rongyue Tianhuan, who had always been delicate, was in high spirits today. He was very heroic and immediately slapped the table. All right, we won't leave until we're drunk. Chapter 2635. Rongyue Tianhuan, the young noble, did not have a high tolerance for alcohol. After a few pots of wine, he was already drunk into a pile of mush. Lying on the table for some reason, he grabbed Ji Xinyu's hand and said, Brother Shin, you're so good looking. If you were a woman, this Marquis would definitely marry you. Sigh, if that Ji Xinyu was like you. Even if this Marquis had to rob you, I would still bring you home. Ji Xinyu patted his face. Young Duke, I really think that you should wake up. Taking advantage of the situation, he withdrew his hand and waved his sleeve. Rongyue Tianhuan, who was originally lying on the table, disappeared. Rongyue Tianhuan had an unknown weakness, he was afraid of skeletons. Whenever he saw a skeleton, he would be scared shitless and his legs would go soft. He also had another harmless problem. No matter how drunk he was, he would wake up at least once in the middle of the night. Whenever he woke up, he would feel extremely thirsty and would want to find water to drink. In the middle of the night, as expected, he woke up again. His head was heavy from the hangover, and his throat was so dry that it was smoking. He opened his eyes in a daze and looked for water in a daze. He saw a small bowl of water beside him that was shining under the moonlight. He felt as if he had found a treasure. He grabbed the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. After drinking it, his mind cleared up a little. He casually looked around and was shocked. The surrounding grass was desolate, and there were countless round grave mounds scattered around. On the big tree above the grave, there were night owls staring at him with their green eyes. His body stiffened. He subconsciously lowered his head and realized that he was lying on top of a grave, and there was a large hole beneath him. However, this was not the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing was that he was holding a white skull the size of a bowl in his hand. Wah! He vomited violently. There was no other reason other than the fact that the water he drank just now came from inside the skull. In the immortal cloud mountain, the sun rose to the horizon. The sunlight shone down, giving the surrounding withered grass a faint layer of gold. Ji Xinyu raised her head to look at the sky. She pinched her fingers in her sleeves for a moment before her eyes narrowed slightly. This flood dragon liked to roam during the day and travel at night. This was the time when it was sleeping soundly and its movements were the slowest. Furthermore, it could not use many of its ferocious skills at this time. This was the best time to get rid of it. With a wave of her hand, more than 10 wild donkeys flew out from her storage space and landed on the grass beside the coiling dragon stream. Because the flood dragons in the coiling dragon stream were too ferocious, no animals dared to come here for a long time. Therefore the grass grew very lush. Although it was late autumn and the grass was yellow, it was still good food for the wild donkeys. As soon as the wild donkey landed, it began to eat happily on the grass. From time to time he would let out a few joyful cries, causing quite a lot of noise. Ji Xinyu hid in the air and watched, patiently waiting for the evil Jiao dragon to appear. The evil Jiao dragon was not only ferocious but also cunning. It only ate living creatures that had been alive for more than 2 hours. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to poison its food. If the poison was too strong, the bait would die before the flood dragon could eat it. And if the poison was not strong, it would be useless against the evil Jiao dragon. The evil Jiao dragon also did not eat the skin of its prey. Therefore, even if the poison was put on the animal's skin, it would be useless. Those who came to subdue the dragon had used all kinds of poison methods, but none of them worked. The moon on the 15th was full on the 16th. Dear friends, look at your backstage. Do you still have a monthly ticket? If you do, draw a circle for Moo Moo with your monthly ticket. Mwah. Chapter 2636. Ji Xinyu also added something to these wild donkeys, but she didn't let them eat it, nor did she put it on their fur but on their legs. This poison was extremely strong, a single drop was enough to kill an elephant in an instant. Ji Xinyu wrapped them in wax pills, and then planted them in the flesh of the wild donkey's hind legs. Wild donkeys were good at running, and when they ran their leg muscles would exert force, and their blood would flow faster, which would slowly corrode the wax pills in their flesh. Once the wax pills broke, the poison would come out, and the poison would naturally take effect. Ji Xinyu's wax pills were very delicate, and could stay in the wild donkeys' bodies for 3 hours without breaking, so these wild donkeys would be fine for a short period of time. Their lively jumping was perfect for becoming the evil flood dragon's food. If there were no accidents, the poison would take effect after the evil flood dragon ate the wild donkeys. Ji Xinyu had already figured out the evil flood dragon's habits, so she was very confident now. Just as she expected, 2 hours later, the waves in the coiling dragon stream surged, and a huge monster came out of the sky, bringing with it wind and rain. When it came out of the water, it was only the size of a Tyrannosaurus rex, but when it flew into the air, it grew as the wind blew and instantly covered the sky like a dark green cloud. Its eyes were like millstones, its body like a mountain, and every scale on its body was the size of a pot lid, emitting a cold green light. It raised its head and roared, causing all the mountains around it to tremble. Ji Xinyu, who was hiding in the dark, also felt her heart tremble. This flood dragon was different from the one described in the documents, and it was several times bigger. Could it have evolved? When such a ferocious creature appeared, it would bring with it an overwhelming pressure. It didn't need to do anything, and those wild donkeys that were lying and eating grass directly fell to the ground, trembling in fear but didn't dare to move. The flood dragon circled down, and with a swipe of its sharp claws, it could tear off an entire donkey's skin and then swallow it whole. This scene was a little bloody, and even Ji Xinyu felt her scalp tighten when she saw it. She held her saber and waited behind the clouds, waiting for the moment the evil flood dragon's poison would take effect. With so many poison pills, even if they couldn't kill it, they should be able to poison it to death, right? In the eyes of the evil Jiao dragon, the donkeys were just a few desserts. In the blink of an eye, they were all eaten. The grass was covered in blood, and the donkey skins were scattered all over the ground. Ji Xinyu silently calculated the time, calculating that the wax skin of the poison pill should have melted by now, and the poison should have entered the evil flood dragon's stomach. She waited for a moment, then quietly parted the clouds around her and looked down. Then he was stunned. The evil flood dragon was nowhere to be found. Could it be that after eating, it fell into the water? Her water escape technique wasn't good enough. If they were to fight in the water, she would most likely be no match for him. She waited for a while, but there was still no movement from the coiling dragon stream. At this time, it should have been poisoned, and the poison was extremely strong, so it should be violently rolling and struggling. Then why was the water surface as calm as a mirror? Ji Xinyu couldn't figure it out, so she simply stretched out her hand, parting all the clouds around her. Just as she was about to rush down to take a look, she suddenly seemed to have sensed something, and her body rolled in the clouds like lightning. A green light with a fishy smell flew past her body, directly shattering the rolling clouds around her. The aftermath of the green light cut a mountain peak not far away, cutting off half of the mountain peak. Chapter 2637. A piece of Ji Xinyu's clothes was cut off by the green light, but luckily she was not injured. She jumped up and saw that the missing flood dragon appeared above her. Its body had shrunk by several sizes, but its terrifying aura was several times stronger. At this moment, it was staring at her with a pair of blood-red eyes, and the corner of its ugly mouth was half raised, like a proud and mocking smile. It was not poisoned. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat, she could not believe it. She clearly saw the flood dragon swallow all the donkey meat. Moreover, in order to prevent the flood dragon from tearing the donkey's skin, she planted the wax pills very deep, and even planted them on the donkey's thigh where the meat was the most abundant, so it was impossible for them to be torn out. Even if 1 or 2 pills were torn out, it was impossible for all of them to be torn out, right? As if to answer her doubts, the evil flood dragon opened its mouth wide, and more than a dozen bright red finger-sized objects shot towards Ji Xinyu. These were the poison pills she had planted on the donkey's body. 18 pills, not a single one missing. This flood dragon was really smart. It actually found out in advance and removed the pills. Those dozen pills came at her fiercely. Ji Xinyu did not dare to use her knife to cut them, in case she cut the wax and the poison inside sprayed all over her body. She dodged to the side and dodged. The 18 pills shot down to the cliff below, and all of them were embedded in the rocks. After a few popping sounds, the cliff quickly turned black and then shattered. The flood dragon looked down, then suddenly raised its head and let out a long roar, and pounced towards Ji Xinyu with the wind and rain. It was very obvious that it was angry. This evil Jiao dragon was really cunning. At this time Ji Xinyu could only fight. Fortunately, she had done enough homework beforehand and knew the flood dragon's moves. She had already planned a way to deal with it in advance, so she was not too flustered when fighting with this flood dragon. In order to make it easier for her to hide on the clouds, she wore a white robe, and held a simple and majestic golden machete in her hand. The machete swayed slightly and a several zhang-tall blade light flew out, slashing towards the flood dragon like a storm. The man and the flood dragon began fighting in mid-air. This flood dragon was of the water attribute. Even if it was fighting in the air, its every move would cause waves to fill the sky. Wherever it went, it would turn into a vast swamp. If Ji Xinyu was not careful, she would be in danger of being swallowed by the swamp. Both of them used their own tricks and fought fiercely in the air. The entire Immortal Cloud Mountain was enveloped in lightning and thunder. The rumbling sounds were like the collapse of the heavens and the earth, causing the entire ground to tremble. The clouds flew around like crazy, and the trees and boulders on the mountain peak were also blown away by the fierce wind from the fight. They flew all over the sky and the momentum was astonishing. Such a huge commotion naturally alarmed the soldiers who had been wandering around the periphery of the Immortal Cloud Mountain. Because they were afraid of being ambushed by the evil flood dragon, the place where these soldiers and generals were patrolling was a full 30 miles away from the Immortal Cloud Mountain. From such a great distance, they could not see clearly what was happening in the Immortal Cloud Mountain, no matter how hard they tried. They could only faintly see the clouds and mist in the distant sky surging crazily, as if a storm was coming. But they could still clearly hear the sounds from the fight between the man and the flood dragon. Especially the flood dragon's roar. It was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. Even from such a great distance, it still caused them to see stars. Chapter 26:38. Especially that flood dragon's roar, it was simply deafening. Even though they were so far away, it still shook them until they saw stars. Even the buildings not far away were shaken by the roar. There were many people who came to Immortal Cloud Mountain to subdue the flood dragon, but this was the first time someone fought with the flood dragon and caused such a big commotion. Due to the great disparity in strength between the enemy and themselves, most of the people who went to Immortal Cloud Mountain to subdue the flood dragon were either killed and fled or became food for the flood dragon. Even if they could really fight with the flood dragon, they could at most last for a quarter of an hour. After a quarter of an hour, Immortal Cloud Mountain would return to its frightening calm. But this time, the fierce fighting sound had already lasted for more than 4 hours and there was still no sign of it weakening. Being so far away, everyone's ears were muddled and the soles of their feet were numb. They were simply unable to run in to check. No one dared to go in to check. Everyone could only stay in place and watch the wind and clouds roll in the sky, curiosity rising in their hearts. Who was the person fighting with the flood dragon? To be able to hold on for so long. One must know that when the sect master of Purple Cloud sect came, even with his great ability, he could only hold on for 2 hours. When he came out, he was covered in injuries. If he did not know the escape technique, he would have lost his life inside. Now the fight inside had lasted for so long. While the soldiers sent people to deliver the news to South Sky Emperor, they were also guessing. One person suddenly had an epiphany. Do you guys think it could be that Eastern Sky Clan's 8th prince? I heard that when he came back, he had already cultivated to high immortal. He should be the #1 person in the world. Perhaps only he has this ability. It's possible. After all, he is our Southern Sky Clan's son-in-law. Although he is unmarried, he silently ran away from the marriage for so long, causing our princess to become the laughingstock of the world. Perhaps he felt apologetic and heard that the flood dragon appeared here, so he specially came to subdue it to give our Southern Sky clan an explanation. Perhaps so. However, our people didn't see how he got in. So many people, yet no one noticed. I heard that this 8th Prince Rongyu not only has high martial arts, he is also the #1 handsome man in the world. As soon as he came back, he caused a sensation in the Eastern Sky clan. Wherever he went, those women would express their goodwill one after another, throwing flower and fruit handkerchiefs. It is said that wherever he went, there would be a sensation. By the way, you said that he is so outstanding now and is already the #1 person in the Fanine continent. Would someone like him still fancy our country's 3rd princess? This is hard to say. After all, our princess doesn't have a good reputation. Nonsense. Isn't it all because of him that our princess has a bad reputation? Actually, our princess isn't that bad either. His voice trailed off as he spoke the last sentence. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The ranks of these people were not high, and all they knew about Princess Ji Xinyue were rumors. None of them had actually seen her in person. It could also be said that on this continent, there were not many people who had actually seen Princess Ji Xinyue. She was sent to the Purple Cloud sect when she was still a child, and the Purple Cloud sect's rules were notoriously strict. Before cultivating to a certain level, they were not allowed to leave the sect. Although the Purple Cloud sect was a famous sect, it did not have many disciples, only about 20. Any one of them would be an absolute expert on the Fanine continent. Chapter 2639. And these people basically stood aloof from worldly affairs. They would occasionally go down the mountain, and their mouths would be tighter than a clam's shell. It was impossible to dig out any gossip about Princess Ji Xinyue from their mouths. Later on, Princess Ji Xinyue returned from her studies, but every time she came and went in a hurry, and most of the time she wore a veil. After so many years, the number of people who could truly see Princess Ji Xinyue's true appearance could be counted on one's fingers. So in the rumors about this princess on this continent, there were even some who said that she was incomparably ugly, completely different from her 2 sisters. Everyone here was discussing spiritedly, and naturally took out Ji Xinyue's shortcomings and repeated them one by one. Even if His Highness the 8th Prince marries our 3rd princess out of righteousness, I'm afraid she can only be his official consort in name. In the future he will definitely take in beautiful concubines. Sigh, our 3rd princess's fate is worrying. Maybe His Highness the 8th Prince will not even be willing to marry her after seeing her like this, and will directly break off the engagement. He probably won't break off the engagement. After all, he has delayed our 3rd princess for so many years. If he breaks off the engagement now, it will be too unreasonable. I'm afraid His Majesty will directly fall out with the East Sky Emperor. Sigh, who knows about the affairs of these important people. But I feel that His Highness the 8th Prince won't be so heartless, right? This is hard to say. I heard that His Highness the 8th Prince was originally not satisfied with this marriage, so he simply walked away. It was the East Sky Emperor who took his birth characters and used a special method to arrange this marriage on his behalf. This marriage was originally not something he wanted to arrange, and was not arranged by him personally. If he insists on breaking off the engagement, we can't say that he is heartless. These people were discussing heatedly when suddenly, there was a slight breeze in the air, and a long sigh seemed to brush past their ears. Everyone was shocked and they all raised their weapons and shouted, "Who?" However, the breeze was cold and the sun was setting. Where was the person? The place they were at was an open space without any cover or obstruction. It belonged to the type where one could see several miles away. Even if a mouse scurried past here, they would be able to see and distinguish its gender. But now they clearly heard that sigh in their ears, but they could not see the person. Haunted. Everyone looked at each other and everyone felt the hair on their backs stand up. Rong Yuetian waved his fan as he casually stood on top of a big tree. To be honest, he was a little depressed. Ugly, not good at needlework, likes to play with knives and sticks, rude and uncultured, and has an inferiority complex, unwilling to meet people. So this was the label that his fiancée had attached to her body. Her inferiority complex was probably caused by him. After all, she had lived with rumors for so long. No matter how strong a girl was, she would feel inferior because of these rumors. But he was ugly, not good at needlework, liked to play with knives and sticks, and was rude and uncultured. These shouldn't be his reasons, right? Of course, he didn't care if the woman knew how to sew. Even if his future wife didn't know how to sew, he wouldn't mind. Being fond of wielding swords and sticks was even less of a problem. Di Zun's women were also fond of wielding swords and sticks. Didn't they still captivate a lot of people? Even the 10,000-year-old ice cube melted, willingly turning into something soft. Every time he saw the Di Zun couple showing off their affection, he felt like he was being abused. What did Ning Xuema say about this situation? Spread a handful of dog food and violently abuse the single dogs? Therefore, it was not a problem for a woman to dislike needlework and enjoy wielding swords and sticks. He even liked it. However, being rude and uncultured, this was really not his cup of tea. Chapter 2640. Whether it was in the Tianxi continent or the Fanning continent, he, Rongyu Tianlan, was the most cultured, most elegant handsome man. He was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He could recite poems and compose essays as soon as he opened his mouth. He was truly a standard cultured person. He was a great scholar and no one was an amateur. How could his wife be a rude and uncultured person? Therefore he had to withdraw from this engagement. He sighed softly and tapped the space between his eyebrows with the fan. If his fiancée was outstanding in all kinds of ways, it would be fine. He wouldn't feel guilty if he withdrew from the engagement. If she was outstanding, even if he withdrew from the engagement, she could quickly find a good marriage partner. But she was like this, she was already an old lady because of him. If he withdrew from the engagement, he was afraid that the rumors would be even more widespread. It would be difficult for her to find a good marriage partner. No good family would want to marry her, right? He couldn't bear this result. Rongyu Tianlan waved the fan and touched his little conscience to reflect there. He thought there for a moment and his heart suddenly moved. 9 out of 10 men were ugly. The reason why his fiancée couldn't get married easily was most likely because of her ugly appearance. However, he was good at a kind of face-changing technique. He could use a kind of surgery and magic to turn something rotten into something magical. Even if she was ugly, he could use this method to change her into a stunning beauty. Then after he withdrew from the engagement, he would perform a cosmetic surgery for her. As long as she was beautiful and had the status of a princess, she wouldn't have to worry about not being able to get married in the future. Yes, this was the idea. As for the South Heaven the Arch, he was indeed sorry. But there was no other way. He always had a hazy woman in his heart. Every time he thought of her, his heart would hurt. The ancestor said that the red Luan star was moving, so he should find that woman and not others. Not to mention that this third princess had so many shortcomings. Even if she was a perfect and peerless beauty, this engagement still had to be withdrawn. He would also give an explanation to the South Heaven the Arch. He shaded his eyes with his hand and looked at the billowing smoke in the distance. Others might not be able to see it clearly, but he could see it very clearly. He saw a white figure moving like lightning, fighting fiercely with the incomparably huge evil flood dragon. Both the man and the dragon were extremely fast. If he hadn't cultivated to this level and his eyesight could be described as abnormal, he probably wouldn't have been able to see the changes in their moves. He looked at it for a moment and raised his eyebrows in surprise. He himself was an absolute expert, so he could naturally see the strength of both sides while watching the battle. That evil Jiao dragon was as abnormal as the rumors said. It was hard to imagine that a flood dragon could cultivate to such a level. Its abnormal level was not something that the experts of this world could subdue. It was no wonder that so many experts had returned in defeat. Even if it was him, if it was 3,000 years ago, he would have no chance of winning against this evil Jiao dragon. It would be good if he could last for 4 hours. But now, he actually saw that the white-robed man and the evil flood dragon were evenly matched. After fighting for so long, the white-robed man still did not show any signs of defeat. He was extremely valiant. He didn't expect there to be such an expert on the Sanskrit continent. Moreover, it was a woman. Interesting. Although the woman used a camouflage technique to change into a man's body, this camouflage technique could only block the eyes of people who were weaker than her, but it couldn't block the eyes of people like Rongyu Tianlan, who was extremely powerful. So he could see through her disguise at a glance and see her original body. Chapter 2641. Because the distance was too far, Rongyu Ishanlin could only see her figure clearly. He couldn't see her delicate appearance for a while. He could only see that the woman's figure seemed to be very good. When she fought, it was actually very pleasing to the eye. Rongyu Ishanlin liked to look at beautiful women. In his own words, he was romantic but not vulgar. He had always liked to appreciate all kinds of beautiful women, but that was all. It was like admiring a beautiful painting or a wonderful poem. He also had a tender heart for the fairer sex. Just like if a beautiful jade fell into the swamp, he would pick it up and wipe it clean with heartache. When a beauty was in trouble, he also liked to help. Now he was watching the battle between the beauty and the dragon in the distant sky. Based on his experience, the beauty's fighting ability was slightly weaker than the dragon's. It would be fine if the battle lasted for 4 hours, but after 4 hours the beauty's physical strength was limited after all, and he was afraid that she would be defeated. If she was defeated in such a situation, he was afraid that she wouldn't get anything good out of it. The evil dragon had been hit by several of her big moves. Although it didn't cause fatal damage, it had taken off several of its scales and scratched several parts of its body. It was probably the first time in its life that the evil dragon had suffered such a big loss. It was so angry that even its scales were standing up. Once the girl was defeated, the evil dragon would definitely chew her to pieces. He leaped up and flew toward the battlefield. His speed was naturally very fast. A distance of dozens of miles was just a blink of an eye for him. The circle of the battle between the woman and the evil dragon was very large. The murderous aura formed when the two fought turned everything within a radius of 10 miles into powder. The murderous aura was so strong that ordinary immortals couldn't get close at all. If they did, they would either die or be injured. However, Rongyue Shenlin was very close. He was so close that he could almost touch the evil dragon's tail. The evil dragon and the woman naturally noticed him, the intruder. This evil dragon already had the intelligence of a human, and it was even smarter than most people. When it saw Rongyue Shenlin's relaxed expression, it knew that the other party was a strong opponent. Its eyes were wide open and its whole body was on guard. The woman glanced at him in the midst of the battle. She seemed to be shocked by his kung fu. However, she only glanced at him once. The people who were in the middle of an intense battle did not have the extra energy to pay attention to their surroundings. Her sixth sense told her that this person wasn't an enemy. He was most likely here to kill the flood dragon. After all, there were too many people who wanted to kill the flood dragon, and this man should be one of them. Because the flood dragon was too famous and too dangerous, the capable people of this continent had already listed it as their #1 enemy. Of course, if anyone could kill it, they would immediately become famous. Even a nobody was no exception. Because of this, although the people who came to find trouble with the evil flood dragon were defeated wave after wave, they still came one after another. Obviously, Ji Xinyue also thought that Rongyue Tianlan was such a person. So after glancing at him, she stopped looking at him and focused on fighting the evil flood dragon. Rongyue Tianlan stood at the side leisurely, allowing the man and the beast to fight until the sky turned dark, but she didn't have any intention of stepping forward to help. According to the rules of World of Martial Arts, when one person was farming a boss, the other person was not allowed to steal the boss before the victor was decided. Unless they were invited by the first person. Otherwise, they would be despised by the entire Fanine continent. Chapter 2642. After all, Rongyue Tianlan was born and raised on this continent, so he understood these rules very well. Therefore, he patiently stood outside the circle as a bystander. He had no interest in snatching the kill, nor did he expect to become famous by killing the flood dragon. These were all fleeting clouds to him. He just couldn't bear to see a beauty become food. He was prepared to extend his small hand to help this girl escape when the time came. As he got closer, he finally saw the girl's appearance clearly, and his heart skipped a beat. This girl was even more beautiful than he had imagined. Her figure was also very good, belonging to the type of femme fatale. Such a girl should have been raised in a boudoir, embroidered, recited poems, and had a group of servants waiting on her. A few drops of tears could attract countless heroes, and with this good appearance she could find a good husband, be rich and leisurely, and be pampered for the rest of her life. She could get everything she wanted with her face, but she had to rely on skills and strength. And her strength was so strong, so high. Rongyue Tianlan looked at Ji Xinyue's moves, and a rare look of admiration appeared in his eyes. This girl was an anomaly. He didn't expect to meet such a special girl on this trip back. It was quite interesting. He paid attention to her moves again and his heart skipped a beat. This girl's kung fu was somewhat similar to the Ziyun sect's kung fu, but it wasn't completely. There seemed to be some kung fu that he had never seen before, but felt inexplicably familiar. Rongyue Tianlan knew better than anyone how difficult it was to cultivate kung fu. It required one to work hard and be able to endure hardships. This girl clearly looked delicate, but he didn't expect her to be so good at fighting, and to be able to cultivate such profound kung fu. Rongyue Tianlan had always been more respectful towards people who were serious and hard-working, and his expression gradually became serious. He looked at Ji Xinyue's clothes. She was wearing very ordinary, an ordinary white shirt, ordinary boots, and even the hairpin that tied her hair looked like an ordinary white jade hairpin. There was nothing valuable on her body. She didn't seem to come from a good background, probably from an ordinary family. Men's clothing, profound kung fu, and ordinary clothes, it was easy for people to guess her background and purpose for coming here. She probably wanted to use killing the flood dragon to become famous and gain the relevant reputation and status. She was a girl who wanted to rely on her real ability to make a living. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes flashed with appreciation. Perhaps he should help her. He couldn't help her out in the open. Otherwise, the girl would think that he was here to steal her kill. He simply sat down on a cloud and waved his fan as he watched the battle in high spirits. His fingers in his sleeves curled slightly as if he was making some kind of spell. In the battle just now, Ji Xinyu was a girl after all. After such a long and intense battle, she gradually lost her strength and fell into a disadvantage. The evil Jiao dragon, on the other hand, became more and more courageous as it fought. It spat out clouds and fog, bit and tore with its claws. Its 18 types of martial arts became more and more proficient, and its moves became more and more ruthless. If this continued, Ji Xinyue would definitely lose in less than an hour. However, ever since Rongyue Tianlan came, the evil dragon suddenly realized that it was easy to deviate when it made a move. It wanted to shoot dozens of ice arrows, but as soon as it opened its mouth, its throat itched and it couldn't help but sneeze. More than 10 ice arrows shot out from its nostrils. Because they were not aimed at their targets, these ice arrows shot towards the ground beneath their feet. They did knock down a mountain peak, but Ji Xinyue was unharmed. Chapter 2643. What made it even more furious was that its nasal cavity was rather delicate, and the ice arrow should not have gone there at all. With this deviation, not only did it not hurt its opponent, it even cut its own nasal cavity a few times. It was burning with pain. Another example was when Ji Xinyu attacked aggressively, it raised its claws, wanting to build an ice wall in front of it. Unexpectedly, just as it raised its claws, it felt a sudden pain under its armpit and its claws shook. The ice wall that was supposed to be built in front of it flew up into the sky, and then fell straight down like a large ice blade, smashing into its own back. When it first built the ice wall, it was afraid that it was not thick enough, but now it felt that it was too heavy, and it almost threw up from the impact. There were countless examples like this. In a fight, a slight mistake could lead to a huge difference. Its consecutive mistakes naturally gave Ji Xinyu an opportunity, and she ruthlessly slashed the evil Jiao dragon countless times. A few of the blades still hit its vital parts. If it wasn't for its tough skin that could withstand all the damage from the divine weapons, those few blades would have taken its life. Even so, its whole body was in pain from the slashes, and it became irritable when it was in pain, and now it was almost jumping with rage. Its roar almost pierced through the clouds and shook the whole earth. It was not stupid, and by now it already knew who was causing trouble in the dark. It originally did not want to pay attention, mainly because it did not want to drag another opponent into the battle, which would be very disadvantageous for it. However, that person's influence on it could not be underestimated, and as long as it had the slightest advantage, it would immediately be plotted against and suffer countless losses in silence. Ji Xinyu naturally also noticed the abnormality, and quickly glanced at Rongyue Tianlan. Rongyue Tianlan had been sitting there quietly, and his expression was like a peach forest, very leisurely and carefree. The fan in his hand swayed slightly, and the wind blew a few strands of his hair, making him look even more carefree and unruly. His appearance was a rare beauty, as clear as an ink painting of a landscape. He sat there with his black hair, blue clothes and white clouds, making people's eyes light up at first sight. This man was a femme fatale. Moreover, he was the kind of elegant, black-bellied noble young master. This kind of man could easily move the hearts of young girls. Even if he didn't speak, he could probably arouse the hearts of countless young girls. He held a folding fan and looked at the battlefield. His excessively handsome face had an inexplicably focused expression. Especially his eyes, they seemed to contain the winding mountains and rivers. The waves were vast and mighty, and when they curved slightly, there seemed to be waves of light floating. At this moment, this pair of eyes fell on Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu glanced at him and their eyes met. He actually smiled at her, his smile like a beautiful spring day, as if there were heavenly flowers falling with his smile. Ji Xinyu calmly averted her gaze. This was clearly a handsome man who could almost be called a disaster, but when Ji Xinyu saw him, she felt an inexplicable irritation. She didn't want to take another look at it. Rong Yuishinlin raised her hand to touch her nose and coughed lightly. There was no woman in this world who would not be stunned when they saw him. Even Ning Xuema, who already had a great god in her heart, looked at him a few more times when she first saw him. However, this young girl in front of him did not seem to take his graceful bearing seriously at all, and looked at him as if she was looking at a lump of cloud. Why was his presence so weak now? Or was there something wrong with him that caused his charm to drop? Chapter 2644. Why was his presence so weak now? Or was there something wrong with him that made his charm drop? He casually took out a small mirror from somewhere and looked at himself. There was nothing wrong with him. He was still handsome and elegant enough to be drawn by a divine brush? Or was it that this little girl's eyesight was not good enough and did not see his gorgeous face? Then he moved closer. He did not move, but the cloud beneath him squeezed closer to the battle circle. He accidentally pushed his head too far and almost bumped into the evil flood dragon. The evil dragon was on guard against him and was shocked when it suddenly saw him so close. It subconsciously slapped him with its tail. Its original intention was to slap him further away from the battle, but it did not expect to not only fail to force the strange spectator to retreat, but also hit the small mirror in his hand with its tail. The small mirror flew out and turned into powder in the air. Not even a shard of glass was left behind. It had poked a hornet's nest this time. The man who was watching the battle leisurely looked as if his beloved treasure had been smashed. He glared at it and said, "The city gate is on fire, and I am just an innocent bystander. Stupid loach, give me back my yin-yang mirror." He stretched out his arm and a bright sword appeared in his hand. The tip of the sword was pointed at the evil dragon's nose. The evil dragon was speechless. Ji Xinyu was speechless. Rongyue Tianlan smiled at Ji Xinyu and said, "Brother, it's not that I want to join the battle, but this loach has gone too far. It actually attacked an innocent passerby like me. Let me take my revenge first. I will return this monster to you later." Rongyue Tianlan had always been a considerate person. Since the other party had transformed into a man, he did not have to expose her identity as a woman, so he addressed Ji Xinyu as brother. Ji Xinyu was a straightforward person. In the fierce battle with the evil dragon, she actually retreated in his direction and replied with one word, "Okay." She retreated too quickly, and the evil dragon was smashing an ice ball the size of a small mountain towards her. This time, it was diverted by her and the ice ball did not hit Ji Xinyu, but almost hit Rongyue Tianlan's head. Rong Yuishinlin picked up his fan and casually flicked it. The ice ball spun in the air and was deflected back by him. The huge ice ball flew back at a much faster speed than before. The evil Jiao dragon couldn't dodge in time and was hit on the head by the ice ball, causing it to feel dizzy for a while. Ji Xinyu retreated far away to the side. She heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did she realize that after fighting for so long, her clothes were already drenched in sweat. She looked like she had just been fished out of the water, and her hair was stuck to her scalp. Fortunately, she was now in the form of a man. Otherwise, with these clothes sticking so tightly to her body, her true form would have been exposed. She wiped the sweat on her forehead with her hand and brushed back the hair that almost covered her eyes. She let out a long sigh of relief. After resting for a while, she felt that her hands and feet were trembling. She was really an arrow at the end of its flight. This man who had appeared out of nowhere made a move at the right time. She looked at the battlefield and saw that the devilishly beautiful man was already fighting with the flood dragon. This person looked cultured and refined, like a scholar who had come to the capital to take the imperial examinations. He looked as if he did not have the strength to truss a chicken, but she did not expect his moves to be so fierce. He used two types of weapons. One was a light folding fan, and the other was a treasure sword that shone with a cold light. The treasure sword was used as an attack. With a raise of his hand, it could transform into thousands of treasure swords, attacking the evil dragon from all directions without any blind spots. Chapter 2645. With the folding fan as a defense, when the evil flood dragon spat out ice blades and ice arrows, they were all deflected by the folding fan that looked like it would break with a pull. The moves he used were also ones that Ji Xinyu had never seen before. Perhaps he was as immovable as a mountain, his entire body shrouded in a gentle blue light, and the treasured sword and folding fan danced around him, making him look like a Buddha standing in the light of Buddha. Or he circled around the evil flood dragon, his movements light and graceful, like a dragon flying in the sky. The moves he used were extremely powerful, causing the evil flood dragon to suffer greatly. The scales on its body were missing piece by piece. The evil flood dragon was furious. The person in front of it was too despicable. It was as if he didn't like its scales, so he focused on peeling them off. Peeling off scales was also very painful. It was like peeling off its skin. The evil flood dragon deeply felt that it would be better to have its flesh cut off instead of being peeled off. In the past year, many people had tried to subdue it, but none of them were as abnormal as the one in front of it. It was completely against its definition of an immortal. The immortals it had seen were all merciful, and did things in an open and above-board manner. When they attacked its vital parts, making it the goal to kill it. Unlike the person in front of it, his goal was to torture it. He also didn't seem to be here to kill it but to use it as a practice tool. The evil flood dragon even suspected that the person in front of it had taken a fancy to its scales, and wanted to peel them all off and let it run around naked. Too wretched. Perhaps it was because of the fight just now, but the evil flood dragon felt that its movements were not as agile as before. When it was fighting with Ji Xinyu, it could still scratch her with its claws from time to time, causing her to be slightly injured. But when it was fighting with the person in front of it, it had already used all of its strength, but it couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. This feeling of being able to see but not being able to hit was extremely frustrating. This was the first time the evil flood dragon had fought in such a cowardly manner. Its thoughts were already completely human, and it could understand human language but it couldn't speak. Otherwise it would have already scolded this person for being shameless. It roared in the flood dragon language to express its anger and disdain. Rong Yu Tianlan acted as if she didn't hear anything. She played with her sword even more happily and leisurely said, "I'm a person who values fairness the most. You attacked me, an innocent passerby, and broke my yin-yang mirror. Naturally you have to pay for this. Let's use your scale armor as a bargaining chip. Since my yin-yang mirror has shattered into 9,999 pieces, then this island lord will also peel 9,999 pieces of your qilin. It's a fair trade, a fair trade. Are you convinced? Submit my ass. Submit my ass." The evil flood dragon couldn't curse, so it could only roar. Brr. Rong Yuetian dug her ears and said in a calm voice, "It's fine as long as you're convinced. You don't have to shout so loudly. I understand. You know nothing." The evil Jiao dragon was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of its head. For the first time in his life, he hated himself for not being able to speak human language. It looked down on humans the most. Therefore, although it was successful in its cultivation, it always appeared in its original form. It was too lazy to cultivate into a human form, so naturally, it was too lazy to speak human language. It thought that as long as it could understand, it was fine. There was no need to speak the language of this lowly race. Now it regretted it. But it didn't have time to apply what it had learned. Rong Yuetian was actually having a good time fighting. It had been a long time since he had such a good fight. Although his original deity rank wasn't very high, he was very good at fighting. Back then, when he was in the Fanning continent, he was already invincible. Chapter 2646. It was lonely at the top, and a life without an opponent was as lonely as snow. That was why he ran away. Running away from the marriage was one thing, but looking for an opponent was another. He finally met an opponent in the Tianxi continent, Xinjiuli. This opponent was too abnormal. He had completely defeated him at that time. This made him depressed, but it also made him want to cultivate. He often challenged Xinjiuli to a fight. Although he was defeated every time, his kung fu was improving rapidly as if he was riding on a rocket. The only regret was that Xinjiuli didn't like to fight. Every time he wanted to fight with him, he had to think of a lot of reasons. Sometimes, he even had to promise a lot of benefits to the Dizun. He felt that he was quite miserable. He had to give others benefits and ask them to beat him up. After fighting with the Dizun for so many years, his kung fu was no longer the same as before. Moreover, his kung fu had been influenced by the Dizun for so many years. It was no longer the same style as before. The Dizun preferred to play chess with him and didn't like to fight. The others were no match for Rong Yue Tianlan, so Rong Yue Tianlan hadn't had a good fight for many years. Now he actually met this evil dragon. Although its kung fu wasn't as good as his, it wasn't weak. Rong Yue Tianlan was itching to fight before he fought. Now that he was fighting, he felt great. He was in high spirits. Peeling the scales was a delicate job, so Rong Yue Tianlan and the evil dragon fought for a long time. Ji Xinyue was paying attention to the battle at first, but later she sat on a mountain and closed her eyes to meditate. Only by meditating could she recover faster. When she meditated, there was a faint pink light circulating around her body. This was the protective light. With this layer of light, even if she was attacked, she would be safe and sound. Rongyue Tianlan could still spare some attention to look at her during the fight. When he saw the faint pink light around her body, his heart suddenly jumped. It was as if he was hit by something. The pink figure flashed in his mind as if it could overlap with the woman in front of him. He was distracted for a moment, and the evil dragon's claw hooked the corner of his clothes. Chi! With a loud sound, a large slit appeared at the corner of his clothes, and his lapel also fell apart. Stupid loach, how dare you ruin my clothes? Don't you know how valuable it is? Our feud is huge. Rongyue Tianlan was furious. With a casual flick of his hand, he tossed his outer robe to Ji Xinyue, who was meditating below. Ji Xinyue had just finished her meditation, and before she could get up, her face was covered by the robe. She reached out and pulled it down. Before she could see clearly what it was, Rongyue Tianlan's voice was heard. It's broken. I'll have to trouble you to sew it for me. Ji Xinyue's lips twitched slightly. Did she look like someone who knew how to sew? She casually put the robe aside, not intending to care about it. Inadvertently, he lowered his head and found that his robe was torn in several places. One of them was at his chest and abdomen, and there was a big hole. Although she had used the transfiguration spell and others saw her as a man, she could still see her original body. The hole in her chest exposed more than half of her chest. When the breeze blew, the hole was very cool. They were all exposed. Ji Xinyue subconsciously grabbed Rongyue Tianlan's robe and used it to cover her chest. She then raised her head to look at Rongyue Tianlan. He was focused on fighting the evil dragon and did not look at her. This person was indeed a pervert. Even when he was fighting in a robe, he still looked elegant and graceful, as if he could enter a painting at any time. Chapter 2647. Ji Xinyue stood up, turned around and went behind a big rock. She took out a new robe from her storage space and put it on before walking out. She looked at the battlefield again, and her gaze focused slightly on Rongyue Tianlan. He was as beautiful as a painting, abnormally high in martial arts, elegant and humorous. Such a man couldn't be a nobody. The reason why she didn't recognize him was because he was someone who had just come to this continent. When these characteristics were put together, Ji Xinyue quickly formed a name in her heart. Rongyue Tianlan. Her unmarried husband, the one who left for 3,000 years and made her the laughingstock of the entire Fanning continent. She didn't expect to meet him for the first time under such circumstances. Ji Xinyue's mood was very complicated. Who would have their entire life affected by one person? From a little princess who was loved by everyone to an abandoned woman who was not loved by her grandmother, uncles, or a lot of rumors. When she saw the main culprit, her mood would not be good. There was definitely resentment, and it wasn't small. When she was still a young girl with a fragile heart, she hated this person so much that she gritted her teeth. At that time, if she was in the present, she would probably have swung a knife and slashed him directly, but now she felt much calmer. As expected, people matured after experience and thought about things more maturely. She was no longer the naive little princess of the past. She had also secretly investigated the matter of the betrothal. At that time, he was a young man in his prime with beautiful women by his side. His robes were implicated in the affectionate gazes of countless women, and the hearts of countless young girls stopped for him. He was known as the most handsome man in the Fanning continent. Such a man was not someone who could be tied down by ordinary women, not to mention that he was forced to be engaged to a little girl in swaddling clothes. It was no wonder that he was scared away and ran away for more than 3,000 years. It was his parents and her parents who were anxious for success that made it like this. She couldn't blame him. However, although she understood this rationally, it was indeed this person in front of her who caused her to fall into such a situation. No wonder she instinctively felt that he was an eyesore when she saw him just now. As expected, her sixth sense was the wisest. She gave a thumbs up to her sixth sense. She was not a saint, so it was impossible for her to not have any hatred in her heart. It was also impossible for her to bury the hatchet with a smile, much less become friends with him. Now Rongyue Tianlan was completely beating up the evil dragon. Most of the scales on the evil dragon's body had been peeled off. At this moment, it almost had no strength to fight back. In that case, it would only take a few minutes for him to get rid of the evil flood dragon. Since he could get rid of the evil flood dragon, there was no need for her to stay here. She only wanted to get rid of the evil Jiao dragon and didn't want to take the credit. Just let him take the credit. After all, it should have been his anyway. She placed Rongyue Tianlan's clothes on a relatively conspicuous large rock, turned around and left. Whoosh! The sound of the wind above his head suddenly became fierce. Ambushed. Her instincts as a martial artist made her subconsciously counterattack. PFFF. Her saber cut into the flesh with a sound. She almost sprayed blood all over her face. She hurriedly dodged and finally managed to avoid it. This island master's revenge is complete. I'll return this monster to you. Rongyu Yishinlin's clear voice sounded from below. Ji Xinyue, however, she didn't have time to argue with Rongyu Yishinlin. Chapter 2648. Because this guy was too immoral, he deliberately dodged towards Ji Xinyue during the fight with the evil dragon, causing the evil dragon to pounce on Ji Xinyue subconsciously. Ji Xinyue subconsciously slashed at it again, right on the neck of the evil dragon that had lost its scales, cutting half a foot deep. The evil dragon was already angry from being teased by Rongyu Yishinlin, but it could not do anything to her. Now that it was hit by her, its target of hatred immediately changed. They attacked her fiercely from head to toe. The evil dragon probably wanted to get back at her, so it used all its remaining strength. Once it went all out, its power was not to be underestimated. The storm of attacks made Ji Xinyue unable to pay attention to Rongyu Yishinlin, who was watching the show below with her arms crossed. Ji Xinyue was not easy to deal with. Moreover, she had rested for so long, and her energy was almost fully recovered. After watching the fight between Rongyu Yishinlin and it, she figured out some ways to deal with it. Most importantly, more than half of the scales on the dragon's body were gone. And they were all the important parts. Without the protection of the scales, how could it ignore Ji Xinyue's big knife? Her big knife was very deadly when she waved it around. As long as it hit its body, it would leave a big bloody wound. Moreover, the wounds were getting deeper and deeper each time. An hour later, the evil dragon's corpse was lying on the hillside, its body cut up like a braised fish. Its two eyes were wide open as if it had died with a grievance. These two despicable humans used the tactic of taking turns to kill it. They had an unfair advantage and it despised them. Ji Xinyue also landed from the sky. She was slightly out of breath. The new clothes that she had just changed into were stained with the dragon's blood. At this moment it was sticking to her body and felt sticky. She wanted to dive into the water and take a good bath. She looked at the coiling dragon stream not far away and paused for a moment. Rongyu Yishinlin was sitting by the lake, stretching her legs and supporting her head with one hand. She looked very lazy and leisurely. There was a fishing rod in her hand and a fish basket beside her. There were already 3 or 4 fish in the basket, alive and kicking. The style, was there something wrong? Ji Xinyue was stunned for a moment. Rongyu Tian seemed to have met a familiar old friend and was very familiar with her. She waved at her and said, "How's your grilled fish? Let's roast a few. The fish here are actually fine-scaled fish. They taste pretty good." With this evil flood dragon here, it was a miracle that there were still fish in the water that were lucky enough to survive. Ji Xinyue did not want to be entangled with him any longer. In any case, the evil flood dragon had already been killed, and if it could no longer do evil, then her mission could be considered completed. There was no need to stay here any longer. She nodded slightly at Rongyu Tianlan. "I'm not hungry, please help yourself. Goodbye." He turned around and was about to leave. "Do you have a problem with my fish? Or are you afraid that I'll poison you?" Behind him, Rongyu Tianlan spoke slowly. Ji Xinyue's footsteps paused for a moment. She didn't want to reveal her identity yet, so she came up with another excuse. "You're overthinking it. I'm just too dirty and want to go back and take a bath." Rongyu Tianlan pointed her chin at the pool next to her. "Isn't this a ready-made bathing place?" She looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "We are all men, are you still afraid that I will see?" Ji Xinyue was speechless. She was indeed afraid that he would see. Even if she was a man now, she didn't want to take a bath in front of a man. Chapter 2649. I don't have the habit of bathing in front of others. Ji Xinyue's lips curled into a decent smile. "Thank you for your kindness. The mountains are high and the rivers are long, we'll meet again." "You seem to have a problem with me, have I offended you?" Rongyu Tianlan asked her with his hands crossed. "No, this is the first time I've met you. If that's the case, then eat the fish before you leave. Rongyue Tianlan made the decision for her, put away the fishing rod and began to clean up the fish in the basket. I heard your stomach growling. A man must be honest. If you're hungry, then you're hungry. Why are you being so reserved? You're not a girl. He cleaned up the fish quickly, and in the blink of an eye, he finished one fish and stuffed it into Ji Xinyu's hands. Come, you roast it, we'll split the work. Ji Xinyu had a headache. Was this person so friendly to everyone? She was actually a very straightforward person. If she hadn't recognized Rongyue Tianlan's identity, she might have taken the initiative to make friends with him. But now, forget it. If she continued to refuse, it would seem pretentious. It was just a meal of fish, it wasn't worth much. So she sat down. If that's the case, thank you. Ji Xinyu felt very magical. Originally, she thought that if she didn't stab this person with a knife after meeting him, she was already magnanimous enough. She didn't expect that she could be friends with him, sitting opposite him and roasting fish together. She felt that her thinking must have reached a new level, to be able to be so magnanimous. Ji Xinyu had been wandering outside for a long time, her survival skills in the wild were quite good, and roasting game was one of her skills. The fish she roasted tasted very good. After Rongyue Tianlan tasted it, he gave her a thumbs up. Good cooking. Ji Xinyu smiled and didn't say anything. She roasted the fish quickly and ate them quickly as well. In a short time, she finished 2 fish and stood up. I'm full, we'll leave now. Wait, I haven't finished eating, brother. It's very impolite for the host to leave when the guest hasn't finished eating. Ji Xinyu was speechless. There's no distinction between host and guest here, right? Why not? I am from the Eastern Sky Clan, but this is the Southern Sky Clan's territory, and you are also from the Southern Sky Clan. I came to your territory, so if you are not the master, then who is? Ji Xinyu. Fine, he had a point. Ji Xinyu sat down again and crossed her arms as she watched him eat. When he lowered his head, he realized that the blood stains on his body had disappeared. She was stunned and raised her head to look at him. I couldn't eat when I saw such a bloody scene, so I cast a cleaning spell on you, Rongyue Tianlan said calmly and continued to eat the fish without raising her head. Although there were many immortals in the Fanning continent, no one knew this cleaning technique. This was the first time Ji Xinyu had heard of it. She sensed her body and found that the cleansing spell was really clean. Not only was her robe clean, even her body was as clean as if she had just taken a bath. This technique was truly miraculous. It was really a treasure for traveling in the Jianghu. If she learned this technique, she wouldn't have to worry about not having enough clothes to change into in the future. As if guessing Ji Xinyu's thoughts, Rongyue Tianlan raised his head and looked at her with a smile in his eyes. Do you want to learn? Ji Xinyu was stunned again. On the Fanning continent there were many sects, so naturally there were many techniques. Chapter 2650. On the Fanning continent there were many sects and naturally there were many skills. Every sect cherished their own skills very much, and they were unwilling to reveal even a little bit of it to people who were not from their sect. The person in front of her was actually willing to teach her such a magical skill? She looked at him warily and asked carefully, "What are your conditions?" Rongyue Tianlan glanced at her. This little girl's guard was unusually heavy, as if she had suffered a great loss. If he said that he had no conditions, she would probably be even more suspicious, so he might as well raise a condition. What should he raise? Rongyue Tianlan's gaze swept across the surroundings, and finally landed on the dragon. He smiled lightly, and when he smiled it was especially beautiful and dazzling. There should be a core in the dragon's head. How about that core belong to me? Ji Xinyu finally breathed a sigh of relief and agreed readily, "Okay. Do as you wish." She had never intended to take the flood dragon in the first place and was not interested in its inner core. Rongyue Tianlan stood up and casually took out a shiny dagger. A moment later, a purple pearl was dug out from the flood dragon's head. Ji Xinyu looked at his nimble movements and couldn't help but guess in her heart, did this person dig out cores often? He was too nimble. Rongyue Tianlan was a little surprised to see the pearl in his hand. It was actually a supreme-grade purple pearl. If such a pearl was refined properly, it could be refined into a spirit-boosting pill, which could increase a person's skills by 500 years after eating it. He was originally afraid that Ji Xinyu would be suspicious, so he casually mentioned it, but he didn't expect to earn a fortune. If he met the ancestor and mentioned this in the future, the ancestor would definitely despise him if he knew that he had used a small cleaning spell to trick a girl into giving him a supreme-grade purple pearl. Although Rongyue Tianlan liked to take advantage of others, he was still a gentleman, and he would not take advantage of girls. Now that he had gotten a big one for no reason, he felt a little apologetic, so not only did he impart the cleaning spell to Ji Xinyue, he also looked at her large blade that was almost curled, and asked very sincerely, "The blade of your blade is curled, do you want me to sharpen it for you?" Ji Xinyue was speechless. She was shocked by his eagerness. Could it be that this person could tell that she was a girl? She had heard that he was quite a playboy. He had always been gentle and took good care of women. No. Not only was she dressed as a man, but she had also transformed her body into a man's. Logically speaking, no one should have seen through her disguise. Moreover, he had been calling her brother. Could it be, he was a homosexual in disguise? Ji Xinyue was so shocked by this last guess that she broke out in a cold sweat. She took a step back and put her broadsword into her storage space. She shook her head and said, "Thank you, but there's no need. Farewell." With a flash, he used an escape technique and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Rangyuishinlin. He rubbed his nose. Was he scared away? Was his performance that frightening? His personality was actually quite lazy, and he was only gentle and courteous towards women. He was not attentive at all. However, today seemed to be a little strange. He was actually attentive to this girl. What was even more inexplicable was that he had an inexplicable good impression of this girl, and he couldn't help but want to treat her better. Could it be that he admired this girl because she was able to roam the Jianghu alone at such a young age, and was even able to fight the evil dragon one-on-one, and was even more outstanding than most men? Chapter 2651. Or was it because all the girls in the world were attracted to him, but only this girl looked at him as if he was a block of wood and ignored his charm? This made him a little unwilling and wanted to attract her attention? Was he such a shallow person? Definitely not. Then it was the first reason. He admired such an independent and self-reliant girl. He had always been a kind and compassionate immortal. Didn't he help Ning Xuema several times back then? He waved his fan and analyzed his mood for a long time before he finally felt relieved. Just as he felt relieved, he saw the dragon's corpse and his heart skipped a beat. This girl spent so much effort and took such a big risk to fight this evil dragon. Now that the evil dragon was finally dead, she actually forgot to cut off the dragon's head and take it to the South Heaven the Arch to ask for credit. Wasn't that a big loss? He raised his hand and cut off the evil dragon's head. The dragon's head was unusually big. Just its head alone was the size of a train. Rong Yuetian circled around the dragon's head, thinking about the possibility of stuffing the head into the storage space and then finding the girl and returning it to her. Suddenly, he heard the sound of wind in the distance. He looked up and saw 7 or 8 people rushing over like meteors. One of them was wearing a shiny yellow robe and looked familiar. Rong Yuetian's heart skipped a beat. The South Heaven the Arch. The South Heaven the Arch actually came in person. The South Heaven the Arch and the others saw the dragon's corpse on the ground and then looked at the dragon's head. Their eyes lit up. It was hard to hide the surprise on their faces. When he saw Rong Yuetian's face, the South Heaven Thearcha's body stiffened. His eyes were filled with surprise and complicated emotions. There was relief and pride in his relief. Son-in-law Tianlan, so the person who killed the dragon was you. Aha, you are indeed young and promising. You have made such a great contribution as soon as you came back and helped me get rid of this problem. Very good. Aha, very good. The other guards and generals beside the South Heaven the Arch were also happy. They immediately congratulated the South Heaven the Arch. Congratulations, Your Majesty. It is the blessing of our South Heaven clan to have such a good son-in-law. The third princess is so lucky. The South Heaven Emperor was even more delighted. He also laughed a few times. He raised his hand and patted Rongyue Tianlan on the shoulder. He said cheerfully, "Seeing that you secretly got rid of this big problem in my heart, I will not pursue the matter of you running away from the marriage. Come, follow me back to the palace. I will reward you well." Rangyue Shinlin, Fire Phoenix City was the capital of the Nantian clan. Today the citizens of Fire Phoenix City were in an uproar. The reason was none other than the 8th Highness of the Eastern Sky Kingdom, who had fled the marriage more than 3,000 years ago, had arrived. Not only did he come, but he also killed the evil Jiao dragon that had been causing chaos for a long time, causing the entire Nantian clan to be in a state of panic. He personally beheaded the evil Jiao dragon. This was simply a huge greeting gift that could not be any bigger. It was more valuable than any other gift. The people of the Nantian clan were originally dissatisfied with the 8th Highness, but at this moment, their dissatisfaction disappeared. The streets had already been cleaned, and the excited crowd crowded on both sides of the road, waiting to see the heroic figure of the eighth prince. At this moment, Ji Xinyue was sitting by the window on the second floor of a restaurant by the road. She looked down and rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. There were too many people watching the commotion on the streets. When she looked down, it was densely packed with people's heads. She was a little trypophobic, so she looked away. The restaurant was still in an uproar because of this piece of news. At this moment, everyone was discussing it noisily. It was so noisy that Ji Xinyue's head hurt. She rubbed her glabella, regretting coming to this restaurant a little. She actually just wanted to drink some wine to refresh herself. She did not expect to see such a grand event. Chapter 2652. She took a sip of wine and wondered if she should bring a gourd of wine to the inn to drink. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Everyone look, they're here. They're here." With a whoosh, everyone rushed to the window and looked down. It was late autumn and the weather was a bit cold. The people of the Southern Sky clan were generally afraid of the cold, so at this time of the year, no one was willing to sit near the window. But at this moment, this seat was in high demand. A large group of people rushed here, almost pushing Ji Xinyu down. She held onto the window to stabilize herself. The people behind her were like sardines in a can. It would be extremely difficult for her to turn around and squeeze out. She looked at the other windows. All the windows facing the street were like this. Countless heads stuck out from each window, and the necks of the people behind them were stretched out like giraffes. Since she was here, she might as well take it easy. She might as well watch the show. A few loud whips sounded in the street. A group of people slowly came from the distance. At the front was the Royal Guard of Honor in bright armor. Behind them was the Emperor's carriage. This time, the Emperor was sitting in a carriage with gauze draped around it. Everyone could see the people inside clearly. There were two people sitting side by side in the carriage. One was the Southern Sky Emperor, and the other was a blue-robed young master. When they saw the blue-robed young master's face, the crowd boiled. Beautiful. Simply too beautiful. So the rumors were true. This Eighth Highness really was the most handsome man in the world. Beautiful like a poem or a painting, so beautiful that there was no trace of the mortal world's aura. What was even rarer was that he was truly handsome, the kind of handsome that a man should be. He was not feminine at all. He sat side by side with the Southern Sky Emperor in the carriage. He held his head with one hand and seemed a bit lazy. But the invisible aura on his body was not inferior to the Southern Sky Emperor's. The Southern Sky Emperor had always been known for his strong aura, but when he sat with him, he was automatically ignored. The crowd on both sides of the street was almost boiling, and the sound of people inhaling rose and fell. The Southern Sky clan had always been more open, and some of the women in the crowd couldn't help but scream. The people on both sides of the street were better. After all, they were on both sides of the carriage and did not dare to make a ruckus. However, the people in the taverns and restaurants on both sides of the street who were leaning against the windows to watch the show did not have so many scruples. Screams and discussions could be heard incessantly. Ji Xinyu felt that her ears were buzzing from the noise. Her ears were filled with praises for this Eighth Highness. Her eyesight was good, so naturally she could see Rongyue Tianlong clearly. She could even see his drooping, thick eyelashes. She was right. It was really him. She curled her lips into a smile and praised herself for her wisdom in her heart. Rong Yuishenlin, who was in the imperial chariot, seemed to have sensed something and looked up. There were too many people paying attention to him. Countless heads of both men and women stretched out from the windows of the shops along the street. They were like little quails waiting to be nurtured in a quail's nest. He absent-mindedly withdrew his gaze and couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows with his snow-white fingers. At the Immortal Cloud Mountain, he had already explained clearly to the South Heaven the Arch that he was not the one who killed the Flood Dragon but someone else. He did not ask for Ji Xinyu's name, so he could not say who this other person was. He only said that it was a friend he met by chance. This credit should be credited to that friend. He also described Ji Xinyu's appearance to the South Heaven the Arch. Chapter 2653. Ji Xinyu's features when she was dressed as a man were actually very ordinary. Other than being handsome and not very tall, there were almost no other characteristics. The South Sky Emperor didn't say it out loud, but he didn't believe it in his heart. If there was such a capable person in his territory, he would have taken action long ago. Why would he allow the evil dragon to run rampant until now? And who did good deeds without leaving a name behind? What's more, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a name for himself. How could he disappear without a trace after killing the Jiao dragon? It didn't make sense at all. It must be his future son-in-law being modest. So the South Sky Emperor laughed and casually said that he would order to find another dragon slayer, but he still told the public that Rongyue Tianlan was the dragon slayer hero and arranged everything. The group of people finally moved slowly. The onlookers then dispersed from the window. Ji Xinyue could finally sit back at her table and let out a sigh of relief. Although the dragon slayer hero was gone, the people's enthusiasm didn't dissipate. There was a lot of discussion in the restaurant, and everyone was discussing this gossip as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Do you think that His Highness Tianlan is here to propose marriage to our Nantian clan? It should be. After all, he and our third princess have been engaged for more than 3,000 years. They should have gotten married long ago. If they had acted earlier, there would be children running all over the place now. Our third princess is so lucky to have such a good husband. Her husband was much more powerful than her two elder sisters' husbands. He's good-looking, has a noble status, and is so capable. The third princess's bitterness is finally over. Yes, I heard that when the third princess was born, a phoenix flew around the palace. It's an auspicious sign, so our third princess is also extraordinary. While these people were praising Rongyue Tianlan, they were also praising the third princess, making her seem like a celestial flower. Ji Xinyue raised her hand and took a sip of wine, shaking her head slightly. Over the years she had heard a lot of gossip about herself, but most of it was negative, degrading her like a dog's tail grass. It was rare to hear praise, but now she was basking in Rongyue Tianlan's glory. This was truly a case of the same person failing the same person. There were two sides to a person's mouth. It was either praised or belittled. However, she didn't care about that anymore. Although the Fanine continent was a cultivation world, some of the rules were the same as the rules of the human world. For example, if a woman's status was low, a man could have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but a woman had to be faithful to a single man. For example, if a man wields a sword and a staff, he is a hero. If a woman doesn't like to wear makeup but prefers to wear a weapon, she is not a woman. The higher the level of a man's cultivation, the more respected he would be. As for a woman, if she could cultivate to the level of a lesser immortal, she would be able to extend her lifespan. That was enough. Their main responsibility was to support their husbands and raise their children. Everything else was insignificant. Therefore, on this continent, the strong were respected, and those with high aptitudes were valued. Women, on the other hand, were looked at for needlework, culinary skills, looks, virtuousness. No matter how high a woman's martial arts aptitude was, no one would pay attention to her. Ji Xinyue's talent had been astonishing since she was young, but no one had paid attention to her. If it wasn't for the special circumstances that led him to become a disciple of the Purple Cloud sect, he wouldn't have cultivated to the level of a divine lord. Of course, her kung fu was no longer the Purple Cloud sect's kung fu. She had other fortuitous encounters. Chapter 2654. A few years ago she hated Rongyue Tianlan very much. She hated this person for ruining her life. Because of this hatred, she couldn't calm down from time to time. She even went mad once when she was practicing martial arts. She was in a coma for more than 10 years and almost lost her life. But then someone's words enlightened her. That person's words were always concise and comprehensive. Just live your life happily. As long as you get what you really want, why should you care about other people's words? That person was her savior. He just saved her casually. That person wore a silver mask, so she didn't know what he looked like. She didn't even know his name. Because after that person saved her, he saw that she had good qualifications and taught her a few immortal skills. He left after spending less than 4 hours with her. Although this person was just a passerby in her life, he really woke her up. She had been wandering around in the Jianghu these years, traveling around the mountains and rivers as Xinyu. She had traveled all over the Fanine continent. When she encountered injustice, she would take care of it, make friends, chat with her friends over wine, or subdue demons together. Her days were actually quite free and unfettered. If she didn't encounter these things, she would still be a princess locked up in the palace. At most, she would be like her 2 sisters, married the husband she liked, and then stayed in another mansion to take care of her husband and children. Her greatest pleasure was to have a garden party with other noble ladies and gossip together, discuss their husbands, their wives, and some family trifles. They would compare with each other. Then they would wait for their husbands to come home in their respective mansions and courtyards. Those men were basically dissolute. Although they only had one wife, they didn't need to have too many concubines. Like her two brothers-in-law, her eldest brother-in-law was a great general of the Nantian clan. After all, he married the princess of his country, so he restrained himself. In addition to his main wife, he only had two beautiful concubines. Compared to other nobles who often had 7 or 8 concubines, he was considered a good man. As for her second brother-in-law, he was a prince of the Western Sky clan. In addition to her second sister, who was his legal wife, he had also taken in 8 concubines in one breath. The drama of the struggle for favor in the harem was staged every day. Not to mention, this second brother-in-law was very handsome and flirtatious. He had a bunch of close female friends outside. In the eyes of men, the flowers at home were never as fragrant as the flowers in the wild. Therefore he often traveled outside and slept with prostitutes. He often didn't return home for a year and a half. If Rongyue Tianlan didn't run away from the marriage, her life would probably be like eldest sister and second sister. This Rongyue Tianlan's appearance was so enchanting and he was so capable. There were so many beauties around him. Once he got married, the number of beautiful concubines around him could be described as 3,000. Even if she became his legal wife, she could only be a member of his harem. Every day she would have to rack her brains on how to fight for her husband's favor. That kind of life would be terrifying. This was not what she wanted. If she had to return to that kind of life now, it would be better to kill her. Therefore, it was better to let Yu Tianlan escape from the marriage. Better to run away from the marriage. Because he ran away from the marriage, she could live a carefree life that was different from any other princess. Therefore, Ji Xinyu didn't hate him these few years. In her subconscious, she even hoped that Rongyue Tianlan would never come back. As long as he didn't come back, she didn't have to think about marriage. But now he was back. Chapter 2655. Whether he came to cancel the engagement or to propose marriage, she didn't want to see him. Because if he cancelled the engagement, her father would have to find another husband for her. There would always be a man who was not afraid of death and greedy for wealth who would marry her. It wasn't good to propose marriage. They were old enough. Once he proposed marriage, the marriage would be put on the agenda quickly. She would have to marry in less than a year. Rongyue Tianlan was indeed outstanding enough. He could be said to be a demon. He was the ideal lover and husband in the hearts of thousands of girls. But she didn't like it. She even felt irritated when she saw him. She felt inexplicably uncomfortable and just wanted to stay far away from him. This emotion was a little strange. She was puzzled at first, but then she found the reason. She probably hated him for thousands of years and it had become a conditioned reflex. Although she didn't hate him now, her subconscious hadn't completely changed. She looked at the long street after the bustle and rubbed her eyebrows. This person came. No matter what his purpose was, her father would definitely search for her with all his might. She had to go back again. But she didn't want to go back. She really wanted to turn off all the sound-transmitting talismans on her and hide for a few years. She could turn off the other sound-transmitting talismans on her, but the special sound-transmitting talisman given by her master couldn't be turned off for more than 3 days. If it exceeded 3 days, she would be considered rebellious and would be expelled from the sect. Her master, God Ziyun, probably only accepted her as a female disciple in his life, so he took extra care of her. He was always afraid that she would be abducted or make other mistakes, so he set this rule for her alone. The special sound-transmitting talisman had to be turned on all the time. Even if there was a last resort, it couldn't be turned off for more than 3 days. She took out the golden sound-transmitting talisman and looked at it. It had been turned off for 2 days. She could still delay it for a day. But what about a day later? She still couldn't delay it. She had to face this sooner or later. Forget it, running away wasn't what a hero would do. She wasn't an ostrich. After she returned to the inn, she turned on the sound-transmitting talisman. Sure enough, as soon as she turned on the sound-transmitting talisman, she heard her master's dignified voice. Sure enough, he asked her to return to Nantian Palace immediately. He said that her father was looking for her urgently. She replied to her master lazily, "Master, my father must have summoned me to the palace because of Rongyue Tianlan's arrival. If I rush back as soon as he comes, how embarrassing would that be? Don't you think so too, master?" Sir God Ziyun agreed, "That's true. This brat has ignored you for more than 3,000 years. You should teach him a lesson. Why don't you go back tomorrow?" "Master, I'm busy right now. I'll go back in 10 days. Sir God Ziyun pondered for a moment before replying, "All right." The voice sounded proud again. I told you that I couldn't contact you. I don't know when I'll be able to return. Let that brat be anxious for a while. Master is wise. Stinky girl, this is actually your good fortune. That brat is indeed not bad. Your senior and junior brothers are also discussing him. It's a good marriage for you. You have to learn to control yourself. He had raised Ji Xinyue and was her master in name, but he treated her even better than her father. He also worried about her more than her father. Ji Xinyu coughed. If she said that she didn't want this husband, she didn't know if her master's jaw would drop from shock. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.